Greetings, Lore Masters. Tonight our chronicle covers the spaces between the code, the whispered secrets that the developers buried deep beneath the user interface, and the mechanics that simply lie to your face. We are stepping away from the grand prophecies of the Elder Scrolls themselves to look at the gears turning behind the curtain, the physics, the glitches, and the mathematical absurdities that define the experience of being the Dragonborn just as much as shouting at dragons does. We are going to explore why the tutorial is an unreliable narrator, and why the laws of physics in Tamriel are more like loose suggestions than actual rules. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a trip to Cold Harbour without some serious enchanted gear. The air there is cold enough to freeze your breath in your lungs, and the Drummer aren't exactly known for their hospitality or their patience with tourists who forgot to upgrade their armour rating. But tonight you are safe. You are far away from the freezing winds of the Pale and the humid swamps of Morthal. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. If you're currently curled up in bed, or sitting at a desk with a warm mug of tea, let me know in the comments where you are listening from, and what time is on the clock. It's always fascinating to see how many of us are synchronised across different time zones, united by a love for broken game mechanics and deep lore. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The story begins not with a shout that shatters the sky, nor with the clash of Daedric steel against dragon scales. It begins with the simple, rhythmic bubbling of a cooking pot inside a warm wooden farmhouse. The fire crackles in the hearth, casting long dancing shadows against the walls, and the smell of roasting leeks and boiled potatoes fills the air. It is a cosy scene, the kind of domestic tranquility that the Dragonborn rarely gets to enjoy between saving the world and looting ancient Nordic crypts. But here, in this humble kitchen, lies the secret to infinite power, a power that the game's tutorial explicitly tries to hide from you. We need to talk about stamina. When you first step out of the cart in Helgen, with your hands bound and the executioner waiting, the game eventually teaches you the basics of physical exertion. You run, the green bar drains. You swing a heavy warhammer, the green bar drains. You block a massive blow from a giant's club, the green bar drains. The tutorial creates a very specific psychological loop. Stamina is a finite resource. It is your breath, your muscle endurance, your ability to keep moving. When the bar hits zero, the screen blurs, your character gasps for air, and you're left vulnerable, unable to sprint away or deliver that crushing power attack that would end the fight. The game conditions you to hoard stamina potions, to invest precious level up points into that green stat, and to enchant your boots with stamina regeneration just to keep the momentum going. This is the first lie. The game wants you to believe that you need a full tank of gas to drive the car, but the reality of the code is much stranger. The mechanics of Skyrim do not check if you have enough stamina to perform an action. They only check if you have any stamina at all. Imagine you are deep within a Dwemer ruin. The air smells of ozone and ancient stale oil. The mechanical chittering of spiders echoes in the dark. You turn a corner and come face to face with a dwarven centurion, a towering construct of brass and steam. In a fair fight, this machine is a juggernaut. If you try to power attack it repeatedly with your two-handed sword, you will swing once, maybe twice, and then watch in horror as your green bar empties. You're now exhausted. You cannot bash with your weapon to stagger the construct. You cannot sprint to cover. You're standing there panting, while the centurion winds up a steam breath attack that will melt your armor. This is how the game is supposed to work. Resource management as a source of tension, but let's rewind. Before entering the ruin, you stopped at that cooking pot. You combined a cabbage, a potato, a leek, and a tomato. These are mundane items. You find them in barrels, in sacks, lying on tables in bandit camps. They are the garbage loot that most players ignore in favour of gold coins and gems, but when combined, they create vegetable soup. The tooltip for vegetable soup reads, regenerate unhealth and 1 stamina per second for 720 seconds. On the surface, this looks pathetic. 1 point of stamina, when you have a pool of 200, it seems negligible. A standard potion restores 50 points instantly. Why would you want a slow trickle of 1 point per second? Here is where the hidden mechanic shatters the illusion of difficulty. Because the game engine allows you to initiate a power attack or a shield bash as long as you have at least 1 point of stamina, This soup effectively removes the cooldown on your physical abilities entirely. When you eat the soup, your stamina regenerates constantly every single second for 12 real-time minutes. Back to the Centurion. You eat the soup, you wind up a power attack. It costs theoretically 40 or 50 stamina. Your bar drops to 0. But within a fraction of a second, literally the next tick of the game clock, the soup adds 1 point back. You now have 1 stamina. You press the attack button again. The game asks, does the player have stamina 0? The answer is yes. You swing again. The result is a stun-lock loop that defies the laws of physics. You can shield bash the Centurion, staggering it. It tries to recover. You bash it again, and again, and again. You can do this indefinitely. You never run out of breath because the soup is force-feeding energy into your veins faster than the game can register your exhaustion. The Centurion, a machine built by the greatest engineers in history, is rendered helpless by a bowl of farm vegetables. It cannot attack because it is permanently staggered by your infinite barrage of shield bashes. There is a profound irony in this. The Dragonborn, a hero with the soul of a dragon, blessed by Akatosh, destined to defeat the World Eater, is fueled not by divine intervention or ancient magic, but by a high-fiber diet. The community has long debated whether this is a glitch or a feature. Is it an oversight? Did the developers simply forget to code in a minimum stamina required check for power attacks? Or is it a subtle nod to the power of a hearty meal? Standard in-game lore tells us that food is essential for survival in the harsh climate of Skyrim. Yet in the vanilla game, there is no hunger mechanic. Food is just bad alchemy. It heals you for 2 or 3 points, which is useless in a fight. Vegetable soup is the only food item that fundamentally alters the combat sandbox. It turns the green bar from a gas tank into a binary switch. If you have soup, the switch is always on. The sensory experience of using this exploit is distinct. There is a rhythm to it. Bash, swing, bash, swing. The sound of your shield connecting with the enemy becomes a metronome. You stop worrying about the resource bars on your HUD. You stop looking at the bottom right of the screen. Your focus shifts entirely to the enemy, and you realize you have become an unstoppable engine of violence. The tension of the fight evaporates, replaced by the comedic realization that you are bullying a dragon. Yes, even dragons are susceptible to this. A dragon lands, ready to breathe fire, and you simply bash it in the snout. It rears back, staggered. You do it again. The mighty beast, capable of burning down watchtowers, is kept in a permanent state of concussion because you ate a potato stew 12 minutes ago. This brings us to a well-established core fact that players often overlook. The recipe for vegetable soup is available from the very start of the game. You don't need perks in alchemy. You don't need to find a recipe scroll. You just need a cooking pot. While alchemy requires you to taste ingredients to learn their effects or experiment blindly, cooking recipes are innate knowledge for the Dragonborn. You emerge from the womb, or the prisoner cart, knowing exactly how to simmer leeks to break the stamina economy. It's a mechanic available at level 1 that remains viable at level 80. However, there is an obscure lore tidbit, or rather a mechanical quirk, regarding the stacking of this effect. While one soup gives you infinite power attacks, the effects of multiple soups actually stack. If you eat 2 bowls, you regenerate 2 stamina per second. If you eat 10 bowls, which takes only a few seconds in the menu, you are regenerating 10 stamina per second. This turns the soup from an exploit into a legitimate healing item as well. Since it also restores health over time, stacking multiple soups creates a regeneration factor that rivals the troll's natural healing ability. You become a troll in human armor, your wounds knitting together and your breath returning instantly, all powered by an inventory full of cabbage. The fan community has a term for this: cheese. But is it really cheese if it requires preparation? You have to farm the items. You have to find the leeks, which, oddly enough, are somewhat rare compared to the abundance of potatoes. There is a specific economy to it. You become a hunter-gatherer, scouring the farms of Rorikstead not for gold but for produce. You look at the Battleborn farm outside Whiterun and you don't see crops. You see ammunition. You see minutes of invincibility sprouting from the earth. Let's consider the implications of this mechanic on the Dragonborn's metabolism fan theories. Fans have jokingly argued that the Dragonborn must have a furnace for a stomach. To consume 10 bowls of hot soup in the middle of a battle, pause time to do so, and immediately feel the effect suggests a biology that is utterly alien. In a way, the vegetable soup mechanic is more law-breaking than the glitches that send giants into the stratosphere. It suggests that energy in Tamriel is not derived from rest or ATP, but from the conceptual idea of being well fed. The game tries to hide this from you by making food seem irrelevant. The tutorial gives you potions, it teaches you the Restoration School of Magic, it gives you enchanted rings, it dazzles you with shiny magical solutions to the problem of stamina loss. It never hands you a ladle, it relies on the player's assumption that common items are weak and rare items are strong. But in the math of Skyrim, a common potato combined with a common leek outperforms a rare potion of vigorous stamina simply because of duration. The potion gives you a burst, the soup gives you a state of being. And this leads to a fundamental shift in how you explore the world. When you know the secret of the soup, you stop fearing long sprints. You can sprint indefinitely across the tundra, covering vast distances without slowing down to walk, because the stamina regeneration ticks fast enough to keep you in the sprinting state, or at least allows you to reinitiate the sprint instantly after stopping for a millisecond. The vast open world shrinks. You're no longer bound by human limitations, you're a locomotive. As we wrap our heads around the culinary arts of the Duvakeen, remember the feeling of that green bar flashing red, the heartbeat sound effect thumping in your ears as you try to flee a saber cat. That is the feeling of a player who hasn't learned to cook. That is the feeling the developers wanted you to have. But you, the enlightened lawmaster, know better. You know that the true power of the voice is nothing compared to the power of the vegetable. You might be thinking, but surely this makes the game too easy, and you would be right. But tonight, we aren't looking for a challenge. We are looking for the truth behind the mechanics. And the truth is that the stamina system is a facade, a paper tiger that crumples the moment it touches a hot broth. It is a system built on the assumption that you will play by the rules of the tutorial rather than the rules of the code. So next time you're in Riverwood, don't just sell those cabbages to the farmer for a few gold pieces. Keep them, hoard them. They are the batteries that will power your conquest of Skyrim. As the fire dies down in the hearth and the soup cools in the bowl, we realise that the most broken mechanics are often the most domestic ones, hiding in plain sight, waiting for a hungry hero to take a bite. If the secret of infinite stamina lies in the warmth of a kitchen hearth, the secret to godhood lies in the cold, dusty halls of the College of Winterhold. Specifically, it hides within the frantic, insecure ramblings of Colette Morantz. You remember her, the Restoration Master who is constantly afraid that you're mocking her. Restoration is a perfectly valid school of magic, she insists, her voice trembling with a mix of defiance and anxiety. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Most players nod politely, buy a healing spell and walk away, treating Restoration as nothing more than a glorified first aid kit. The tutorial and the early game mechanics reinforce this. You get hurt, you cast healing hands, you see a trap, you cast a ward. It is a reactive school of magic designed to fix mistakes. But Colette was right, though perhaps not in the way she intended. Restoration isn't just valid. When manipulated correctly, it is the single most broken mechanic in the game's code, capable of rewriting the mathematical constants of your character's existence. To understand why, we must look at a specific perk deep in the Restoration skill tree, unlocked at level 70. It is called Necromage. The in-game text is simple, almost boring. It reads, "All spells are more effective against undead." At face value, this is a paladin's perk. It sounds like a tool for the righteous hunter. You take it so that your turn undead spells send higher level Draugr fleeing in terror, or so that your sun damage spells burn vampires a little faster. It seems designed to help you clear out Nordic ruins with slightly more efficiency. The game presents it as an offensive modifier, a way to hurt the things that go bump in the night. But here is where the game's logic collapses under its own weight. The game engine does not distinguish between the bad guys and the player when it checks for tags. It simply looks for a condition. The condition for Necromage is simple. Target. Is undead. Jowl 1. If the target of a spell or effect is flagged as undead, the effect's magnitude is increased by 25% and its duration is extended by 50%. Now, consider the choice to become a vampire. When you contract Sanguinar Vampiris, perhaps from a stray bite in Movarth's lair, and let the disease fester for 3 in-game days, your character's race creates a hidden flag in the system. You're no longer just a Nord, or an Imperial, or a Khajiit. You are undead. When you are a vampire with the Necromage perk, the game engine looks at you and sees a target that qualifies for the bonus. Because almost every positive effect in Skyrim, from drinking a potion to wearing enchanted armor, to receiving a blessing from a shrine, is coded as a spell applied to the player. Necromage boosts everything you do to yourself. This is the Necromage Vampire synergy, a feedback loop that the tutorial never warns you about. The game tells you that vampirism is a curse. It warns you about the weakness to fire, the stunted stats in sunlight, and the hatred of the general populace. It frames the transformation as a desperate struggle for humanity. But the code tells a different story. The code says that being a corpse is the key to perfection. Let's look at the numbers. You enchant a ring with Fortify Archery. Normally this might give you a 40% damage boost, but if you are a Necromage Vampire, the game applies the spell to your undead body, sees the Necromage perk, and multiplies the effect. That 40% becomes 50%. This happens for every single enchantment on your body. Boots of Sneaking? Buffed. Helmets of Magicka? Buffed. The very clothes on your back become tighter, stronger, more efficient, simply because your heart has stopped beating. It goes deeper than just gear. Consider the standing stones. When you touch the Atronach stone, the game applies a permanent spell to your character, giving you spell absorption and magicka. Because you are undead, Necromage amplifies this blessing. The Atronach stone normally provides 50% spell absorption. With the synergy, it jumps to 62.5%. If you combine this with the Atronach perk in the alteration tree, which is also buffed by Necromage, you can hit 100% spell absorption. You become immune to all magic. Dragon fire, lightning bolts, ice spikes, they simply vanish upon touching your skin, converted instantly into mana. You're a walking void, consuming the energy of the universe, all because a restoration perk meant for killing zombies got confused by your own biology. This interaction extends to shouts as well. The slow time shout is technically a spell effect applied to the player. It alters your perception of time. If you are a Necromage Vampire, the duration of slow time is extended by 50%. You can move through a frozen world for what feels like an eternity. While enemies are stuck in molasses, you are dancing around them, casually lining up shots or rearranging their furniture. The Elemental Fury shout, which increases your swing speed, turns your arms into blurry pistons of destruction. Core in-game facts reinforce the curse narrative. You're told by innkeepers that Morthal is dangerous, that vampires are monsters to be hunted. The Dawnguard DLC is entirely predicated on the idea that you must choose between remaining human or becoming a monster, but the hidden mechanics reveal that the human state is mathematically inferior. There is no perk called Living Mage that buffs spells on living targets. Being alive is a debuff, it is a limitation. The fan community has debated this interaction for over a decade. Is it a glitch, or is it an emergent feature? The unofficial Skyrim patch, a mod created by the community to fix thousands of bugs, famously fixes this interaction, removing the buff for the player. This caused a massive rift in the player base. Purists argued that since the game allows it without console commands, it is canon. They argue that it makes logical sense. You are undead, you have mastered the magic of the undead, therefore you should be better at affecting yourself. It fits the fantasy of the Lich, the master of death who has transcended mortal limits. Others argue it breaks the game's difficulty curve entirely, and it does. But let's be honest, Skyrim is not a game about balance, it is a game about power fantasy. And there is something deliciously ironic about using the holy magic of restoration to become the ultimate unholy terror. The process of setting this up feels like a ritual. It requires patience. You must level restoration to 70, a tedious grind of casting Turn Undead on the same poor skeleton over and over again, or standing in a forge letting the fire burn you while you heal yourself. It's a hypnotic repetitive process, perfect for a late-night gaming session where your brain is half asleep. You watch the blue bar drain and fill, the healing sound effect washing over you like a tide. Then you must contract the disease. You stand before a vampire letting it drain your life, waiting for that notification in the top left corner. You have contracted sanguinar vampiris. You wait 3 days. You watch the sun rise and set, knowing that soon the sun will become your enemy. And finally, the transformation. Your eyes glow, your skin pales, and then you open the skill menu and invest that 1 perk point into Necromage. Suddenly the world feels different. You open your active effects menu and the numbers have shifted. It's subtle at first. Maybe your carry weight is a little higher than it should be because the steed stone is buffed. Maybe your potions last a little longer, but soon you realise you're playing a different game. You're playing a game where the rules of diminishing returns no longer apply to you. There is also an obscure lore tidbit found in the Notes on Dim Hollow Crypt that mentions vampires seeking to enhance their powers through magical artifacts, but no in-game book ever explicitly states that restoration magic, the very antithesis of vampirism, is the key. The closest we get is the existence of the Vampire Royal Armour, which provides immense magicka regeneration, suggesting that ancient vampire lords understood the necessity of magical amplification. But the Necromage synergy suggests that the Dragonborn has stumbled upon a secret that even Lord Harkon, in all his arrogance, never figured out. Harkon sought to blot out the sun. He thought the environment was the problem. The Necromage Dragonborn realizes that the self is the variable to be optimized. Mechanically, this also affects the dual flurry perk. If you take this perk while a vampire, your swing speed increases even further. We will discuss the secrets of dual-wielding later, but just know that a Necromage Vampire with 2 daggers is essentially a blender with a heartbeat. The attack animations can become so fast that they break the sound synchronization. You hear the impact before you see the swing. The beauty of the Necromage synergy is that it forces you to embrace the darker aesthetic of the game. To maintain this power, you must live as a creature of the night. You deal with the annoyed comments from guards. Is that fur coming out of your ears? No. Wait, that's werewolves. For vampires it's, don't like those eyes you got. There's a bad hunger to them. You accept the hostility of the world in exchange for mathematical superiority. You accept that your health won't regenerate in sunlight. Unless, of course, you have that enchanted gear we talked about, which is now 25% stronger and overrides the sun penalty completely. It turns the weakness of the vampire into a trivial inconvenience. The game says, you are weak to fire. You say, I have an amulet of fire resistance that is buffed by Necromage, so actually I am immune to fire. The game says, you don't regenerate stats in the sun. You say, I have the Lady Stone buffed by Necromage, so I regenerate faster than a mortal standing in the shade. You're effectively gaslighting the game engine, using its own classification system to bypass the punishments it tries to inflict on you. This is the ultimate lie of the tutorial. The tutorial teaches you that you are the hero, the mortal saviour. It teaches you to fear the dark, to light torches, to repel the undead. But the mechanics whisper a different truth. The dark is where the power is. The dark is where the math works in your favour. By rejecting your humanity and embracing the cold logic of the undead flag, you achieve a state of being that creates a mockery of the divines. And as you glide through the world, your footsteps silent thanks to your buffed muffle spell, you might wonder if this was intentional. Did a developer at Bethesda sit there late one night and decide to reward the players who dared to mix light and shadow? Or was it just a missed bracket in a line of code? In the silence of the night, as you organise your inventory and gaze at your inflated stats, the answer doesn't really matter. What matters is that you are the apex predator, not because of your shout, but because you know how to read the fine print of your own character sheet. The vegetable soup keeps you moving, and the vampire blood keeps you stronger than any mortal has the right to be. You are a fueled, undead engine of efficiency, but armour is a different story. You might think that with all these buffs you should aim for the highest armour rating possible. You might be crafting Daedric plate, tempering it to legendary status, trying to see that number climb into the thousands. You would be wasting your time. Because just like the stamina bar, the armour rating number is a lie designed to make you feel safe, when in reality, it stops working long before you think it does. The heat of the forge is suffocating. It is a dry, intense heat that singes the hair on your arms and dries out your eyes. Standing at the Skyforge in Whiterun, looking out over the plains, you fall into a trance. Clang, hiss, clang, hiss. The rhythm of smithing is one of the most hypnotic sounds in the game. You take an iron ingot, you take a leather strip, and you fashion a dagger. Then you do it again, and again. You're not making these weapons to use them. You're making them to watch a blue bar fill up in the top of your vision. You're grinding for that elusive level 100 in smithing, driven by the desire to craft dragonbone or daedric armor. The ultimate protection, the jagged demonic steel that screams, "I am invincible." And when you finally craft it, when you temper it to legendary status at the workbench using a potion of fortify smithing and wearing 4 pieces of crafting gear, you look at your inventory. The numbers are staggering. Your chest piece alone has an armor rating of 400. Your boots, gauntlets, and helmet push the total well over 1000. You smile. You feel like a walking fortress. You imagine arrows bouncing off your chest like rain, and giants breaking their clubs against your shins. You march out into the world, confident that the number displayed on your screen, 1200, maybe 1500, is a true reflection of your durability. I am sorry to be the one to tell you this, but the game is lying to you. That number is a mirage. It is a placebo designed to make you feel progression where none exists. Here is the cold, hard math of Skyrim's damage reduction system. The game engine enforces a strict physical damage reduction cap of 80%. No matter what you wear, no matter how much you temper your gear, you can never ever block more than 80% of incoming physical damage. This cap is hit when your displayed armor rating reaches 567. Read that again. 567. If your armor rating is 568, you're wasting stat points. If your armor rating is 2000, you're carrying around tons of extra weight for absolutely zero mechanical benefit. A bandit hitting a player with 567 armor deals the exact same amount of damage as he would to a player with a glitched out rating of 5,000. The excess armor rating vanishes into the void of the code, providing no diminishing returns, no secret buffer, just nothing. The tragedy of this mechanic is how early you can reach this cap without realizing it. A player in a full set of well-tempered glass armor, light armor, can hit 567 just as easily as a player in daedric armor, heavy armor. This renders the entire late-game hierarchy of heavy armor completely obsolete from a purely defensive standpoint. The heavy, menacing daedric plate, with its glowing red hearts and intimidating spikes, offers no more protection than a well-made suit of leather or glass once you have engaged with the crafting loop. You're wearing 50 pounds of demon metal for the aesthetic, while the thief next to you is bouncing around in like chitin with the exact same damage mitigation. But the rabbit hole goes deeper. The game doesn't just cap you, it actively fudges the numbers in your favour to help you hit that cap, further obscuring the truth. This brings us to a piece of obscure lore hidden in the gameplay formulas, the hidden armor rating. For every single piece of armor you equip, chest, head, hands, feet, the game silently adds a hidden plus 25 to your armor rating. This number does not show up in your inventory menu, it is invisible. If you're wearing a full set of 4 armor pieces, helmet, chest, gauntlets, boots, the game is secretly adding 1/100 to your rating behind the scenes. This means that the displayed magic number you need to see in your menu to hit the cap isn't actually 667, the true mathematical cap. It is 567, because the game assumes you're wearing 4 pieces of gear. If you're using a shield, that's another plus 125 hidden rating. This invisible hand of the developer is constantly padding your stats, like a parent putting training wheels on a bicycle. It ensures that even players who don't optimize their gear feel tougher than they should. Consider the Lord Stone, a core in-game fact many players stumble upon. It grants 50 points of armor rating. To a novice, this sounds great. To a master blacksmith who has already hit 567, the Lord Stone is effectively broken. It adds nothing to your physical defense because you are already at the ceiling. The game doesn't warn you about this. It doesn't grey out the effect. It lets you think you're getting stronger, when in reality you are stacking bricks on a roof that has already reached the sky. This creates a fascinating community debate that has raged for over a decade, the fashion souls argument. Since the armor cap is so easily reachable with smithing and alchemy, min-maxers argue that heavy armor is objectively worse than light armor. Light armor weighs less, allows you to sprint longer, consumes less stamina, and with the Windwalker perk, regenerates stamina faster. If both light and heavy armor stop 80% of damage, heavy armor has no mechanical advantage. It is strictly a handicap. The only reason to wear it is because you want to look like a terrifying warlord. The fan community is divided between the role players who wear Daedric for the cool factor, and the efficient players who run around in Dragonscale or Glass, laughing at the slow clanking tanks. However, the consequences of this cap are brutal on higher difficulties. On Legendary difficulty, enemies deal 3x damage to you. Let's do the math. A Draugr Deathlord hits you with an ebony bow. The base damage is massive. Even with the 80% reduction from the armor cap, the remaining 20% that gets through is multiplied by the difficulty setting. This is why, even with perfect armor, you can still be one-shot by a power attack. The armor cap creates a false sense of security. You look at your rating, you think you're a god, and then a two-handed bandit chief decapitates you in a dedicated kill cam animation because the bleed-through damage exceeded your health pool. The animation system itself is brutal in this regard. When an enemy performs a kill move on you, that cinematic moment where the camera spins around and you watch your character get impaled, the game calculates this based on your current health and their damage output. Because the armor cap halts your mitigation at 80%, there's a threshold of health where you're technically alive, but the game decides you're already dead. You might have 20% health left, thinking you can pop a potion, but the math has already decided that the next swing will kill you, so it triggers the animation. You lose control of your character before your health hits 0. You watch, helpless, as the mechanics betray you. There is one exception to this rule, a specific magical interaction that tries to bypass the armor system entirely. The master-level alteration spell, Dragonhide. Unlike Ebony Flesh or Iron Flesh, which just add flat numbers to your armor rating, subject to the cap, Dragonhide sets your physical damage reduction to 80% directly. It doesn't care about your armor rating. You could be naked, you could be wearing fine clothes. For 30 seconds, or longer with our friend the Necromage Vampire synergy, you have the defensive capabilities of a tank while wearing a bathrobe. This spell is the ultimate validation of the cloth mage. It proves that in Tamriel, skin can be made as hard as dragon bone if you know the right words. But for the warrior, the armor cap is a tragic realization. It means the pursuit of power has a hard stop. You spend hours traversing the glowing, psychedelic depths of Blackreach to mine geodes for ebony ore. You hunt Daedra to rip their hearts out. You construct the most fearsome armor known to Myr and Ben. And mechanically, you are no safer than the town guard complaining about his cousin fighting dragons. It changes how you look at the loot loop. You stop caring about finding better armor. Once you have a set that hits 567, you are done. The loot inside the boss chest, the dwarven plate, the orcish helmet, becomes vendor trash immediately. The excitement of finding an upgrade vanishes, replaced by the utility of finding enchantments. The game shifts from protecting your body to augmenting your stats. This is why experienced players often stop wearing helmets. If you can hit the armor cap with just a chest piece, boots and gauntlets, and perhaps a shield, why cover your face? You can show off your character creation sliders, letting your luscious hair flow in the wind, knowing that a steel plate over your face would add literally 0 survival value. It is the ultimate flex, facing a dragon without a helmet, not because you are brave, but because you know the spreadsheet. The visual storytelling of Skyrim suggests that heavier is better. The sound design supports this. The heavy thud 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 of steel boots suggests weight and power. The screen shake when a giant stomp suggests mass, but the numbers are airy, floating things, detached from the physics they are supposed to represent. Imagine the Dragonborn standing before Alduin, the World Eater. Alduin breathes fire, magic damage, ignored by armor, and bites, physical damage. The Dragonborn is wearing a mishmash of chitin and leather that hits the 567 cap. Alduin's teeth sink in, but they meet the invisible wall of the 80% reduction. It doesn't matter that the armor looks like it's made of dried bug shells. It holds. Meanwhile, a different Dragonborn in full Daedric plate takes the same bite. The metal shrieks, sparks fly, but the damage is identical. The game treats the divine metal and the bug shell as equals. This effectively turns the armor skill trees, heavy armor and light armor, into utility trees rather than defensive ones. You don't take perks in heavy armor to take less damage, you take them to carry less weight or to reflect damage back at enemies. The Reflect Blows perk, heavy armor level 100, grants a 10% chance to reflect melee damage back to the enemy. This sounds cool, but since you are already mitigating 80% of the incoming damage, you are reflecting 10% of the unmitigated damage? Or the mitigated damage? The community tested this tirelessly. It reflects the full raw damage, which is nice. But since enemy health pools are massive compared to their damage output, a sponge mechanic, reflecting 100 damage to an enemy with 1000 health is negligible. It's another lie. A level 100 perk that functions more like a party trick than a tactical advantage. So as you lay your head down tonight, spare a thought for the poor bandit chief in his fur armour. He has probably hit the armour cap for his level bracket. He's doing his best, and spare a thought for your own character, burdened by hundreds of pounds of useless metal, clanking through the silence of a Nordic tomb. You're safe, yes, but you were safe a long time ago, back when you were wearing simple steel. The rest is just vanity. But while your physical body is capped by the limits of the armour system, your magical resistance is a different beast entirely. You might think that magic resistance works the same way, that there's a cap you can't cross, and you would be right. But there is a way to bypass resistance entirely and simply tell the universe that magic does not exist for you. It's called absorption, and it is the math that breaks wizards. The air in the boss chamber crackles with ozone. You're standing opposite a dragon priest, hovering a few feet off the ground, his mask gleaming in the torchlight. He raises a staff, and a fireball the size of a carriage wheel hurtles toward you. If you are relying on the armor rating we just discussed, you are in trouble. Physical armor does nothing against the raw thermal energy of a fireball. The fire will wrap around your plate mail, cook you inside your suit, and leave you as a charred husk on the stone floor. To survive this, the game teaches you to seek magic resistance. You find a shield with the enchantment. You wear a necklace of resist fire. You play as a Breton to take advantage of their natural hardiness against spells. You stack these percentages, watching the numbers climb. 10% here, 20% there. You feel secure. You think, if I get my resistance high enough, magic can't hurt me. But the game is holding back a crucial detail. Magic resistance, like armor rating, has a hard cap. It stops at 85%. This means that no matter how many enchantments you layer, no matter how many potions you drink, 15% of every spell will always punch through. Against a novice flame spray, 15% is a tickle. Against the ancient fire of a dragon priest, or the breath of a legendary dragon on high difficulty, that 15% is enough to kill you instantly. You're mathematically prohibited from being immune to magic through resistance alone. However, there is a second, superior mechanic that the game explains poorly, if at all. It is called spell absorption. And unlike resistance, which dampens the blow, absorption catches the blow in midair, crushes it into pure energy, and feeds it back into your soul. Magic resistance is a wall, spell absorption is a hunger. When you have 50% magic resistance, you take half damage. When you have 50% spell absorption, the game rolls a die every time a spell hits you. It's a coin flip. Heads, you take full damage. Tails, you take 0 damage, and your magicka bar refills by the cost of the spell. It is an all-or-nothing gamble. But what happens when you rig the coin toss? If you can push that number to 100%, you cease to be a target and become a void. Fireballs don't explode on impact. They simply disappear when they touch your hitbox, converted instantly into blue magicka. Ice storms pass through you like ghosts. Lightning bolts, which usually drain your magicka, now refill it. You have inverted the combat loop. The more enemies try to kill you, the stronger you get. You can stand in a stream of dragonfire and laugh, because the dragon is essentially just a very large, scaly battery charger. Achieving this state requires a specific cocktail of choices, often revolving around the Atronach stone, a standing stone found in the bubbling sulphurous marshlands of the Rift. A core in-game fact is that the Atronach stone grants 50% spell absorption, but stunting your magicka regeneration. This sounds like a heavy price for a mage. A wizard who cannot regenerate mana is a wizard who cannot cast spells. So, most players avoid it, or use it only on warrior builds that don't need magic. But the true lore master knows that the stunted regeneration is a lie if you are being attacked. Who needs natural regeneration when a single enemy fireball fills your entire mana pool? To reach the golden 100%, you need to stack the deck. If you're playing a Breton, your racial-powered dragon skin grants 50% absorption for 60 seconds. Combine this with the Atronach stone, and for 1 minute a day, you are immune to all magic. But we don't want temporary immunity. We want permanent godhood. This brings us back to the Necromage Vampire. If you are a vampire with the Necromage perk, the Atronach Stone's 50% buff is multiplied by 1.25, becoming 62.5%. If you then take the Atronach perk in the Alteration skill tree, which normally grants 30% absorption, the Necromage perk buffs that too, raising it to 37.5%. Do the math. 62.5 plus 37.5 equals exactly 100%. It creates a binary state of existence. Magic sing damage. 0, always. But there is a catch, an obscure lore tidbit that manifests as a frustrating mechanical quirk. The game engine defines spell very loosely. To the code, a spell isn't just a fireball or a healing beam. It is any magical effect that has an origin and a target. This includes your own conjuration spells. Imagine this. You have achieved 100% spell absorption. You're a god. You walk into a bandit camp immune to their mages. You decide to summon a Dremora Lord to handle the melee fighters. You cast the spell. You see the purple portal open, and then it fizzes out. No Dremora appears. Your magicka bar, however, flashes full. What happened? You absorbed your own summon. The game calculates the summon Dremora spell as an effect targeting the ground, but also linked to you, the caster. Your 100% absorption sees this magical effect trying to manifest and says, "I'll take that, thank you." It eats the spell before the Dremora can step through oblivion. You try to summon an Atronach, eaten. You try to summon a ghostly wolf, eaten. You are so magically absorbent that you cannot project your will outward into a physical form because you keep consuming your own magic the moment it leaves your fingertips. This leads to a fascinating philosophical debate within the community regarding the Atronach's curse. Is this a bug? Bethesda never patched it in the official updates. The unofficial patch mod fixes it, classifying it as an error. But many lore enthusiasts argue it is a perfect representation of the Atronach constellation. The Atronach is the celestial symbol of the sorcerer who draws power from the outside but generates none from within. It is a sign of selfishness, of consumption. It makes poetic sense that a perfect Atronach cannot share the world with summoned spirits. It can only take. It is a solitary path to power. If you want to play a summoner, you cannot be immune to magic. You must choose. Do you want to be invincible, or do you want friends? The absorption mechanic extends even further into the weirdness of the engine. It absorbs shouts. If a Draugr Deathlord uses unrelenting force on you, instead of being ragdolled across the room, you might just absorb the acoustic energy and gain mana. It absorbs environmental effects. There are traps in Nordic ruins that spray magical oil or fire. These become free mana fountains. There is a specific interaction with the Circle of Protection spell. If you cast this restoration spell on the ground and stand inside it, and you have spell absorption, you will constantly absorb the buff that the circle applies to you. Since the circle reapplies the buff every second, you are essentially standing in a geyser of infinite magicka. Your mana bar regenerates faster than you can possibly spend it. You can hold down the trigger for a master level lightning spell like Lightning Storm and never run out, channeling a continuous beam of death like a fantasy laser cannon, powered by your own feet touching a magical circle. This completely breaks the resource economy of the mage class. The tutorial teaches you to be careful with your mana, to wear robes that regenerate it, to buy potions. The hidden mechanic teaches you that if you break the absorption cap, mana is infinite. Visually, this playstyle is understated. Resistance has no visual effect, but absorption has a subtle, distinctive sound. A low, watery thwum noise, and a blue flash on your character model. When you walk through a dungeon full of necromancers, that sound becomes a constant rhythm. Thwum, thwum, thwum. It's the sound of the game trying to hurt you and failing. It's the sound of the developer's intent shattering against the wall of your optimization. There is also a strange interaction with diseases. In Skyrim, diseases like rockjoint or ataxia are often coded as magical effects applied by an animal's attack. If you have 100% spell absorption, you effectively become immune to diseases as well. The rat bites you, trying to apply the ataxia spell effect. Your absorption triggers. You eat the disease. You convert the bacteria into mana. It is absurd, it is biologically impossible, but it is the law of the land. This highlights the stark difference between resistance and immunity. Resistance is for mortals. It is for the warrior who expects to bleed and wants to bleed a little less. Absorption is for the entity that has transcended mortality. It changes the genre of the game. You're no longer playing an RPG where you manage health bars. You're playing a simulator of a superior being walking among ants. However, this power trips up players who rely on Shadowmere, the legendary horse of the Dark Brotherhood. Shadowmere is tough and regenerates health quickly. But if you are a master of conjuration, without the absorption bug, and you try to use the spell Courage, or Heal Other on your horse, and that horse happens to have the Atronach Stone effect, which is rare but possible via glitches or mods, the horse might absorb your help. But generally, the problem is you absorbing the helpful spells of others. If you have a follower who is a healer, mage, like Jazago or Serana, and they try to cast Heal Other on you when you are low on health, your absorption might trigger. You eat the healing spell. You get mana, but you don't get health. You could die because your immune system is too aggressive, consuming the cure before it can work. The Atronach archetype forces a solitary existence. You cannot be healed by others. You cannot summon help. You're a black hole of magical energy, walking alone through the dark. And speaking of walking alone in the dark, let's talk about noise. You've just crafted that Daedric armor we discussed earlier. It's heavy, bulky, and looks like it weighs a ton. Naturally, you assume that clanking around in metal plates makes you harder to sneak. You assume the light armor skill tree is the only path for a stealth archer or assassin. The game tells you that heavy armor makes more noise. This is true, but the game hides the specific variable that actually controls your detection. It isn't the type of armor that betrays you, it is the sheer gravitational pull of the number on the scale. And there is a way to make even the heaviest plate mail silent as a whisper, if you understand the secret of movement weight. We need to address the elephant in the room, or rather, the elephant trying to hide behind a small bush. You have likely experienced the cognitive dissonance of playing a heavy armor character in Skyrim. You spend hours crafting that Daedric set we discussed. It is jagged, heavy, and covered in spikes that look like they would snag on every branch in the rift. Visually, it screams aggression. Acoustically, it should sound like a kitchen cabinet falling down a flight of stairs every time you take a step. Yet, the tutorial and the loading screen tips insist that heavier armor makes you harder to detect. This creates a binary in your mind. Light armor is for thieves and assassins. Heavy armor is for warriors and paladins. If you want to sneak, you wear leather. If you want to brawl, you wear steel. It seems like a fair trade-off, a balanced mechanic that enforces class identity. But the code reveals that this trade-off is entirely optional, and the distinction between a silent assassin and a walking tank is not determined by the material of your boots, but by a simple variable, fMoveSneakMult. The game calculates detection noise based on the total weight of your equipped apparel. Note the word equipped. The game does not care if you have 50 dragon bones in your backpack. It only cares about what is currently strapped to your body. The formula takes the weight of your armor and multiplies it by a specific factor to determine the radius of sound you generate when moving. A set of Daedric armor weighs roughly 50 units. A set of leather armor weighs roughly 10. Therefore, naturally, the Daedric armor is 5 times louder. However, the game provides a loophole that completely erases this penalty, rendering the light armor versus heavy armor stealth debate mathematically moot. It is the conditioning perk in the heavy armor tree or its celestial cousin, the Steedstone. The Steedstone, found north of Solitude near the Thalmor Embassy, offers a blessing that makes your equipped armor weigh exactly 0. Not just feel lighter, but 0. In the eyes of the game engine, when you activate this stone, you're wearing air. Your Daedric plate, your ebony boots, your orcish helmet, their weight value in the calculation drops to null. Because the noise formula relies on weight, and your weight is now 0, your movement noise drops to the baseline level of a naked character. You could be wearing a suit of armor forged from the blood of gods, weighing as much as a cart, but because of a specific perk or stone, you're as silent as a ghost. The Fulmer, with their heightened hearing, cannot hear the clanking of metal plates because the math tells them there is no metal there. You are a silent juggernaut. This mechanic shatters the immersion for some, but for the lore master it is the ultimate optimization. It allows for the creation of the heavy stealth build, a character who can sneak attack with a dagger for massive damage, but who, can also stand up and tank a dragon's bite if the stealth breaks. It invalidates the primary disadvantage of the warrior class. This leads to a core in-game fact that players often encounter but rarely fully appreciate: the stealth archer singularity. It is a running joke in the community that all roads lead to stealth archery. You start as a mage. You eventually pick up a bound bow and start sneaking. You start as a two-handed barbarian. Eventually, you get tired of chasing enemies and crouch down with a bow. The reason this archetype is so dominant is partly due to this weight mechanic. Since you can negate the noise penalty of heavy armor, there is no reason not to have the best defense while also having the best offense, stealth multipliers. The game does not force you to be squishy to be sneaky. It lets you be an armored bunker that moves like a breeze. But there is a deeper layer to the noise mechanic, one that involves the muffle effect. You have likely seen boots with the muffle enchantment, or the spell in the illusion school. The description simply says, move more quietly. It's vague. It feels like a small percentage boost, perhaps similar to Fortify Sneak. The reality is that muffle is the most powerful stealth stat in the game, far superior to the sneak skill itself. The sneak skill reduces your visual detection radius, how easily enemies see you. Muffle reduces your audio detection radius, how easily enemies hear you. Here is the obscure lore tidbit. The muffle effect has a hard cap of 1.0, or 100%. If you reach 100% muffle magnitude, your movement noise is reduced to absolute zero, not quiet, but non-existent. You could be sprinting in full heavy armor, even without the weight reduction perk, and the game would register your noise level as null. The confusing part is how the game distributes this effect. The muffle spell grants 100% noise reduction instantly. Cast it, and you are silent. However, most enchanted boots you find in the world only provide 50% muffle, even if the description doesn't tell you the percentage. This means finding a random pair of ebony boots of muffling only does half the job. You're still making noise. But, and here is where the developers left a backdoor open, if you learn the enchantment by disenchanting a generic item and then apply it to your own boots using a Grand Soul gem, the magnitude is often fixed at 100% regardless of your enchanting skill level, in vanilla versions. Or you can take the silence perk in the sneak tree, which provides a permanent passive 100% muffle effect. Once you have the silence perk, armor weight becomes completely irrelevant for detection purposes. The conditioning perk we mentioned earlier makes you silent because it removes weight. The silence perk makes you silent because it ignores weight. You have two different keys to the same door. This creates a fascinating scenario in the mid-game where you are technically breaking the laws of physics. Imagine the Dragonborn sprinting through a library. Books should be rattling, floorboards should be creaking. But the enemies, the necromancers studying their tomes, don't even look up until an arrow is lodged in their forehead. The audio engine has been told to ignore you. You are an acoustic anomaly. The sensory experience of playing a high-level sneak character is defined by the eye reticle. We all know the tension. The eye opens slightly. Detected. You freeze. The eye closes. Hidden. It is a game of red light. Green light played with the AI's perception cones. But when you understand the weight and muffle mechanics, you realize that the hearing part of the AI is easily defeated. The only thing left is line of sight. This is why Failmer are the ultimate test subjects. They are blind. They rely 100% on audio detection. If you have the silence perk or the steed stone, you can literally walk up to a Failmer, stand directly in front of its face and jump up and down. It will not react. It will sniff the air, maybe grunt, but it will not attack because you do not exist in its sensory world. You are a phantom. There is a dark humour in bullying these terrifying twisted elves simply because you understand the math of their ears better than they do. The community has long debated whether this is broken or working as intended. Some argue that muffle should never be 100%, that there should always be a chance for a creaky floorboard or the rustle of chainmail to give you away. They argue that total silence removes the tension from stealth. Others argue that the Dragonborn is a demigod, a master of all trades, and mastering silence is just another facet of their power. But let's talk about the specific animation of sneaking, that low crouch, the duck walk. Have you ever noticed how fast you can move while crouching if you stack the right bonuses? This brings us to a specific interaction with the silent roll perk. The game allows you to perform a forward roll while sneaking to close distance quickly. It costs stamina. But if you hold a weapon in your hand, hold the block button, and tap the sprint button while sneaking, you can sometimes perform a silent roll that glitches out and propels you forward faster than your normal running speed, all while remaining in the stealth state. You become a tumbling ball of death, a rolling boulder of daedric metal that makes no sound. It looks ridiculous. If you were to watch a replay of your character from a third-person perspective, it would look like a slapstick comedy routine. But to the enemies, it is the invisible hand of death. The lie of the tutorial is that light armor is for sneaking. The truth is, low weight is for sneaking, and since heavy armor can be made weightless, heavy armor is also for sneaking. In fact, heavy armor is arguably better for sneaking because if you do get caught, you have the armor rating, or at least the visual intimidation, to survive the consequences. There is, however, a psychological component to this. Many players simply cannot bring themselves to sneak in heavy armor. It feels wrong. It violates the tropes of the fantasy genre. We are conditioned by decades of Dungeons & Dragons and movies to believe that the thief wears a hood and leather, not a horned helmet and plate mail. So we impose a handicap on ourselves. We wear the Thieves' Guild armor, or the Nightingale armor because it looks the part. We embrace the aesthetic over the mechanic, and the game rewards this vanity with unique enchantments. The Nightingale boots, for example, have a custom muffle magnitude that scales with your level. But purely from a movement noise perspective, a naked orc and a Nightingale agent are identical if they both have the silence perk. So, as you creep through the shadows of Golden Glow Estate, burning beehives and dodging mercenaries, remember that your silence is not a result of your soft leather soles. It is a result of a mathematical flag that has turned off your footsteps. You could be wearing symbols on your knees, and as long as that muffle variable hits 1.0, the world will remain deaf to your passing. But speed is not just about rolling quietly. Speed is about how your weapons move through the air. You might think that swinging two swords makes you twice as deadly, a whirlwind of blades. You might think the weight of both weapons matters. But the game has a very strange way of deciding how fast you can cut through your enemies, and it involves ignoring half of your inventory. There is a primal appeal to holding a weapon in each hand. It is the berserker fantasy, the dervish of death, the idea that defense is for cowards, and the best way to survive a fight is to turn the air in front of you into a wall of sharp metal. You see the forsworn Briarhearts tearing through your health bar with two axes, their movements frenzied and terrifying. You see the loading screens depicting a warrior with a sword and a dagger, looking ready for anything, and you think, I want that. So you equip a mace in your right hand, because maces ignore armor with the right perks, and you want that crushing power. In your left hand, you equip another mace, or perhaps a heavy war axe. You expect to be a slow, lumbering storm of destruction. Or maybe you equip two daggers, expecting to be a blur of speed. You assume that the game calculates your attack speed based on the combined weight of your weapons, or perhaps it averages them out. But once again, the tutorial lies by omission. The game engine does not care about your right hand. Your right hand is just the payload. Your left hand is the engine. The mechanic governing dual-wield attack speed is surprisingly simple and completely counterintuitive. When you perform a dual-wield power attack, that 3-hit combo where you scissoring your arms together, the speed of the entire animation is dictated exclusively by the weapon in your left hand. This means you can cheat the physics of weight. If you hold the heaviest, clunkiest weapon in the game, let's say the Mace of Molag Bal, a rusty demonic bludgeon that looks like it weighs 40 pounds, in your right hand, and a simple iron dagger in your left hand, the game looks at the dagger and says, okay, we are moving at dagger speed today. The result is a mace that swings with the velocity of a switchblade. You become a blur. The heavy mace, which should take a full second to wind up, snaps forward instantly. The animation looks almost broken, as if the character's arm has suddenly been replaced by a hydraulic piston. You're delivering the crushing impact of a two-handed strike with the frequency of a sewing machine. This is the secret of the highest DPS, damage per second, builds in the game. It isn't about having the biggest numbers on the screen, it's about tricking the game into letting you deliver those numbers 3 times a second. This interaction is further amplified by the dual flurry perk in the one-handed skill tree. This perk increases the speed of dual-wield attacks. When you combine dual flurry with a left-hand dagger and a right-hand mace, you enter a state of violence that the game struggles to render. The sound effects start to overlap. The crunch of the mace hitting bone happens before the swing animation has fully finished. You are hitting the enemy with the future. There is a specific rhythm to this playstyle. You don't just mash the buttons, you hold both triggers, or mouse buttons, to initiate the power, attack. The character steps forward, strikes with the left, strikes with the right, and then strikes with both. Because the dagger is leading the dance, the first hit connects instantly, staggering the enemy. The mace follows up a millisecond later. By the time the enemy recovers from the stagger of the first hit, the third hit, the double strike, has already landed. This trivializes even the toughest bosses. Karstag, the spectral frost giant hidden in the Dragonborn DLC, is widely considered the hardest boss in the game. He has massive health, hits like a runaway train, and regenerates health. A normal player fighting Karstag has to dodge, weave, and chip away for 10 minutes. A player who understands the left-hand speed secret walks up to Karstag, eats a bowl of vegetable soup, remember our infinite stamina, and shreds the giant in under 15 seconds. The giant spends the entire fight in a stagger animation, unable to stomp, unable to summon blizzards, just vibrating in place as he is disassembled by a dagger mace hybrid engine. The core in-game fact that enables this is that daggers have the highest base attack speed, 1.3, while maces have the lowest, 0.8. Swords and axes sit in the middle. Most players naturally put their strongest weapon in the right hand because that's the primary attack button. This accidental habit leads them halfway to the truth, but they usually match it with a similar weapon in the left hand for symmetry. Breaking that symmetry is the key, but there is a catch, a limitation that balances this absurdity, though only slightly. You cannot block while dual-wielding. The right mouse button, which is usually block, becomes the left-hand attack. This means you are defenseless. You're committed to the philosophy of kill them before they kill me. It turns Skyrim into a game of chicken. You run at a bandit chief. He raises his warhammer. You raise your dagger and mace. Who lands first? With the speed glitch, it's always you. But if you mistime the range, you eat that warhammer to the face, and because you probably aren't wearing a shield, it hurts. There is an obscure lore tidbit, or rather a unique item quirk, that perfects this build. It is Valda's Lucky Dagger. You get this from a small, easily missed quest in Falkreath, helping a hunter clear out a spriggan-infested cave. The dagger isn't enchanted in the traditional sense. It has a unique innate effect that grants a 25% chance to critical hit. Because it's not considered enchanted by the game mechanics, it is compatible with the Elemental Fury shout. Elemental Fury increases your attack speed dramatically, but it only works on unenchanted weapons. If you hold Valda's Lucky Dagger in your left hand and another unenchanted powerhouse in your right, and then shout Elemental Fury, the game speed practically breaks. You're swinging so fast that the framerate might dip on older consoles. You become a blender. The sheer volume of attacks ensures that the critical hit chance triggers constantly. You aren't just stabbing, you are drilling. This leads to the windmill fan theory, just debate. Some players argue that the dual-wield power attack animation is too long, leaving you rooted in place and vulnerable. They argue that cancel casting, tapping the block button to interrupt the animation, is the only high-level way to play. But the speed freaks argue that with enough buffs, the animation finishes so fast that you aren't vulnerable at all. You're a mobile hitbox of death. The debate centers on commitment. In a game like Dark Souls, attacking is a commitment. In Skyrim, with these exploits, attacking is a state of being. Visually, the mismatch of weapons bothers some players. Seeing a tiny iron dagger paired with a Daedric mace looks lopsided. It lacks the elegance of dual katanas. But this is the aesthetic of the min-maxer. It is function over form. It is the look of a Dragonborn who has read the source code and decided that symmetry is for people who do less damage. The left hand becomes a stat stick. You don't really care about the damage of the dagger. It could be a rusted fork for all you care as long as it has the 1.3 speed multiplier. Its only job is to set the tempo. The right hand does the heavy lifting. This changes how you loot. You stop looking for two good weapons. You look for one good weapon and one fast weapon, and let's not forget the enchantments. If your left-hand dagger has absorbed stamina, even a single point, you can maintain the power attack loop indefinitely without even needing the vegetable soup, though the soup is still safer. The fast hits of the dagger constantly refill your tank, allowing the heavy mace to keep swinging. It is a perpetual motion machine of violence. The sound design of dual-wielding is a chaotic mess of grunts and swooshes, Hoo-ha! Ha 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 ha! The Dragonborn sounds exhausted just performing the move. But the enemy makes a different sound, the wet thud of a health disappearing. It is satisfying in a way that magic rarely is. Magic feels distant. Archery feels detached. Dual-wielding feels like work. It feels like you are physically dismantling the opposition. There is also a strange interaction with mounted combat. You cannot dual-wield on a horse. The game forces you to use the right-hand weapon only. This suddenly makes you feel sluggish again. You jump off your horse, draw your weapons, and suddenly you are fast. It reinforces the idea that the Dragonborn is more dangerous on foot than on horseback. The horse is a limiter. The ground is your domain. As you carve your way through the Civil War, cutting down stormcloaks or Imperials like wheat in a field, you realise that the legendary warriors of lore were probably just using this exploit. Ysgramor and his axe Wuthrad? Sure, impressive. But if Ysgramor had known to hold a paring knife in his other hand, the elves wouldn't have stood a chance in the first place. But speed and physical damage are only one side of the coin. Sometimes you don't want to cut the enemy. Sometimes you want to bend reality until the numbers on your screen lose all meaning. You want to wear a helmet that gives you a million magicka. You want a potion that heals you for infinity. To do that, we have to leave the battlefield and return to the crafting table, to perform a ritual known as the Restoration Loop. If the dual-wielding exploit is a physical violation of the game's combat rules, the Restoration Loop is a philosophical violation of the game's reality. It is the moment where you stop playing the Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim, and start playing the underlying spreadsheet engine that powers it. It is alchemy gone wrong, a science experiment that spirals out of control until you are holding a potion that doesn't just restore health, but effectively restores your ability to dictate the laws of the universe. We return to the alchemy table. Maybe it's the one in Bree's home tucked under the stairs in the dusty dark. Maybe it's the arcane enchanter in the Archmage's quarters. The setting doesn't matter, but the ingredients do. You need two specific things: a set of armour enchanted with Fortify Alchemy, and a handful of small shimmering fish, specifically the Abyssian Longfin and the Cyrodiilic Spadetail. These fish are harmless. You see them swimming in the rivers, darting away from your splashing boots. They're ingredients for a Fortify Restoration Potion. Standard stuff. A normal player might brew one to help heal faster during a boss fight. But you are not a normal player. You know a secret about how the game classifies magical effects. Here is the glitch in the Matrix. The game considers the enchantments on your armour, specifically Fortify Alchemy, to be restoration magic. This simple categorization error is the crack in the dam. Because your gear is technically a restoration spell, drinking a potion of Fortify Restoration doesn't just buff your healing spells, it buffs your gear. It makes the enchantment on your helmet stronger for 60 seconds, and if your helmet is stronger, it allows you to craft a stronger potion. This creates a recursive loop, a positive feedback loop of exponential growth. The ritual goes like this. 1. You put on your alchemy gear, helmet, braces, ring, necklace. Let's say they boost your alchemy by 25% each. 2. You craft a potion of Fortify Restoration. 3. You drink the potion. 4. Now here is the trick. You must open your inventory, unequip your gear, and then re-equip it. When you put the gear back on, the game recalculates its stats based on the potion you just drank. Suddenly, your 25% boost is a 40% boost. 5. You craft another potion. This one is stronger because your gear is stronger. 6. You drink the new potion. You unequip and re-equip. Your gear is now providing an 80% boost. 7. Repeat. At first, the numbers climb slowly. 100%, 200%, 500%. But because the math is multiplicative, it eventually explodes. Within a few minutes of frantic clicking, drink, unequip, equip, craft, you're looking at a potion of Fortify Restoration that increases the skill by 14,000%. The numbers spill out of the text boxes. The UI cannot contain them. You have created a singular point of mathematical absurdity in a glass vial. Now, what do you do with this god potion? You drink it one last time. Your alchemy stats are now effectively infinite. Then, you switch ingredients. You stop using fish. You pick up a blue butterfly wing and some snowberries. You craft a potion of Fortify Enchanting. The result is a potion that boosts your enchanting skill by millions of %. You take this potion, walk over to the arcane enchanter, and you enchant a simple iron dagger with fire damage. Normally an enchantment does 10 or 20 points of damage. Your new dagger does 536,870,912 points of fire damage. You have created a weapon that doesn't just kill enemies, it deletes them. You poke a legendary dragon, and it simply ceases to exist. Its health bar doesn't drain, it vanishes. You can enchant a pair of boots with Fortify carry weight, and suddenly you can carry the entire contents of every dungeon in Skyrim in your pocket without being encumbered. You can enchant a ring with Fortify health, giving you billions of hit points. You can stand in the middle of a supernova and your health bar wouldn't even flicker. This is the restoration loop. It is the ultimate power fantasy, but it is also a dangerous path. The game engine is fragile. It uses 32-bit signed integers to track these numbers. If you push the loop too far, if you get greedy and go for one more cycle of potions, the number will exceed the maximum value the code can handle. 2,047,483,647. When this happens, the math wraps around to the negative. Suddenly your potion doesn't fortify health by 1 billion. It decreases health by 1 billion. You drink it and instantly die, your character collapsing as if their soul was ripped out by the sheer weight of a math error. Or you craft a bow that heals enemies when you shoot them, or the game simply crashes to the desktop, the software itself giving up in the face of your hubris. There is a profound lesson here about moderation. The game allows you to become a god, but if you try to become a titan, it destroys the universe. You have to find the sweet spot, high enough to be invincible, but low enough to exist within the game's reality. This exploit fundamentally changes how you interact with the game world. Loot becomes meaningless. Why clear a dungeon for a sword of embers when you can craft a wooden sword that deals infinite damage? Daedric artifacts, the prizes of gods, become paperweights. The Mace of Molag Bal is a toy compared to the Fork of Doom you just enchanted in your kitchen. It validates the Chim fan theories. In Elder Scrolls lore, Chim is a state of enlightenment where a character realizes they are in a dream, a video game, and can manipulate the reality of that dream. Vivek achieved Chim, Tiber Septim achieved Chim, and now you, the player using the restoration loop, have achieved Chim. You have seen the code, you have realized that the rules are arbitrary, you have reached into the fabric of the dream and reshaped it to your will. But there is a loneliness to this power. Combat loses its tension. You walk through the world like a tourist in a diorama. Nothing can hurt you, nothing can stop you. The dragons are just birds, the vampire lords are just mosquitoes. You start to miss the struggle. You start to miss the days when you had to eat vegetable soup just to swing a hammer. There is a core in-game fact that makes this even funnier. The ingredients for this godhood are laughably common. Salt pile, Cyrodiilic spade tail, Abesian longfin. You don't need Daedra hearts or void salts. You need table salt and a fish you caught in the Riften docks. The most powerful magic in the world is derived from a fish dinner. It's as if the developers are mocking the high fantasy tropes. The path to omnipotence isn't found in an ancient scroll, it's found in a bucket of fish guts. The community debate around this is fierce. Is it cheating? Absolutely. But in a single-player game, who are you cheating? You are only cheating yourself out of a challenge. Yet many players consider a rest loop run to be a rite of passage. You haven't truly played Skyrim until you've crafted boots that let you run from Markarth to Riften in 3 seconds, though the game engine usually crashes if you move that fast because it can't load the terrain. There is also the Fortify smithing variant. Instead of enchanting, you craft a potion that boosts smithing by 1,000,000%. You take it to the grindstone, you sharpen your iron sword. It becomes Iron Sword, legendary, with a damage rating that requires scientific notation. This is arguably safer than the enchanting route because you can accidentally sell the sword or put it in a chest if it's too strong, whereas a permanent health enchantment on your body is harder to remove if you lose the ring. One obscure lore tidbit, or rather a mechanical consequence, is how this affects the Ebony Warrior. The Ebony Warrior is the final boss of the game, appearing only when you reach level 80. He has a perk called Reflect Blows, which we mentioned earlier. He has a 10% chance to reflect melee damage. If you hit him with your Resto Loop sword that deals 10 million damage, and that 10% chance triggers, you take 1 million damage instantly. You kill yourself. The Ebony Warrior doesn't even have to swing his sword. He just stands there, acts as a mirror, and you obliterate your own existence. It is the only check and balance the game has against this level of power. The ultimate defense against a god is to let the god hit himself. Visually, There is nothing to indicate this power. Your character looks the same. The potion looks like any other glowing bottle. The sword looks like rusty iron. But the numbers tell the story. When you open your menu and see damage 382-103, you feel a strange mix of pride and guilt. You have broken the contract between player and developer. The restoration is a perfectly valid School of Magic line from Colette Morant's takes on a terrifying new meaning. She was right. It is valid. It is too valid. It is the source code of creation. By manipulating the restorative properties of magic, you are effectively healing your stats beyond their natural limits, overhealing them into monstrosity. So, if you decide to walk this path, be careful. Save your game often. Create a separate save file called the God Run, because once you taste this power, it is very hard to go back to chipping away at a dragon's health bar for 10 minutes. You will look at that dragon and think, I could end this in one click, and that thought is the beginning of the end of your adventure. But perhaps you don't want to break the game entirely. Perhaps you just want to break the rules of companionship. You want a friend who grows with you, a shield brother who can watch your back. But the game has a cruel secret about your friends. It puts invisible shackles on them, stunting their growth while you ascend to the heavens. You are standing on the peak of the throat of the world, the wind whipping around your Daedric armour. You have slain Alduin, you have conquered the vampire menace, and you have built a house with your own 2 hands. You are level 80, a demigod of destruction. And standing next to you, shivering in the cold, is Lydia. She's wearing the dragon plate armour you gifted her. She holds a sword capable of severing the fabric of reality. But when a frost troll attacks, something tragic happens. You watch as she swings her sword with the lethargy of a tired child. You watch as the troll's swipe takes away half her health bar. She falls to one knee, gasping, "I cannot best you," while you, who could kill the troll with a sneeze, wonder what went wrong. You assume it's the AI. You assume she's just having a bad day, but the truth is much sadder. The truth is that while you were growing into a legend, the game engine forced your best friend to remain a peasant. This brings us to the hidden tragedy of follower level caps. In the code of Skyrim, every NPC has a specific parameter called max level. This is a hard ceiling that dictates how strong they can ever become. For many of the most iconic followers, the ones you meet early and bond with, this ceiling is shockingly low. Take Lydia, for example. She is the first housecarl most players receive. She is loyal, she is iconic, and she is sworn to carry your burdens. But in the original version of the game, and even in some patched iterations depending on when you trigger her spawn, she has a level cap of 50. This sounds decent, until you realise that you, the player, can level indefinitely, or at least to 81 and beyond with the legendary skill system. Once you pass level 50, you're leaving Lydia behind. Every level you gain widens the gap. Her health stops increasing. Her stamina remains static. Her skills in one-handed and heavy armour freeze in time. She becomes a museum piece, a relic of your early game, trying to fight enemies that have scaled up to match your level 80 status. It is even worse for others. Fendel, the wood elf archer in Riverwood who likely helped you cheese your first few levels of archery, often caps at level 30. Roggy Knotbeard, a Nord miner who seems tough and eager to help, has a level cap of 20. If you take Roggy into a high-level Draugr ruin, you're essentially bringing a civilian into a war zone. He isn't fighting, he's just dying in slow motion. But the mechanic has a darker layer. The first encounter, Lock. In many versions of the game engine, a follower's stats are generated and locked the moment you first enter the cell, the area, where they exist. If you walk into Dragon's Reach at level 6 to talk to the Jarl, the game generates Lydia as a level 6 character. Even if you don't become Thane until level 50, the game has already printed her character sheet. She's a level 6 entity waiting for you. When you finally unlock her, she might not scale up to meet you immediately. She might be stuck with the health and damage of a novice until the game is forced to refresh her data. You're running around with a housecarl who has the durability of a wet paper towel, wondering why she spends every fight crawling on the floor. This leads to a heartbreaking realization. The game punishes loyalty. The followers you meet first, the ones you have the most history with, are mathematically the worst companions for the endgame. The drifter mercenary you hire in a tavern in Solstheim at level 60 will be infinitely stronger than the shield brother who's been with you since Helgen. However, There is an exception. There is one student at the College of Winterhold who is not just arrogant but factually correct in his arrogance. J'zargo. J'zargo is a Khajiit mage who speaks in the third person and constantly competes with you. J'zargo only has so much room for things, he complains. But J'zargo is one of the very few followers in the vanilla game who has no level cap. Or rather, his cap is set to the maximum possible integer the game usually handles for NPCs, which means he scales with you all the way to level 81 and beyond. If you're level 100, J'zargo is level 100. He has the health, the magicka, and the skill points of a master wizard. While Lydia is stuck in the mid-game, J'zargo is throwing master-level lightning bolts and tanking damage like a boss. The community often mocks him for his scroll quest, where he gives you exploding flame cloaks, but mechanically, he is the strongest follower in Skyrim. He's the only friend who truly grows with you. This creates a fascinating J'zargo supremacy debate in the fan community. Is he the true Dragonborn's companion? His dialogue suggests he thinks he is better than everyone else, and the code backs him up. While the companions of Jorrvaskr, supposedly the greatest warriors in the land, cap out Farkas and Vilkas cap at 50, the random Khajiit student keeps getting stronger. It suggests that magic, or perhaps just Khajiit ambition, is the only path to limitless power. But what if you love Lydia? What if you can't bear to part with Faendal? Is there a way to break the lock? This brings us to one of the most absurd and violent fixes in gaming history, the Wabbajack reset. The Wabbajack is the Daedric artifact of Sheogorath, a staff that casts random, chaotic effects. It can turn enemies into sweet rolls, shower them with coins, or transform them into chickens. It is a joke weapon. But for the lore master, it is a surgical tool, to update a follower's stats, to force the game to realise, oh, the player is level 80, this NPC should be level 82. You must force the game to delete and respawn the NPC's actor data. You can't just ask them to train harder, you have to unmake them. The ritual is grim. You take your beloved spouse or follower to a secluded location. You save your game, always save because the Wabbajack is unpredictable. You dismiss them from your service so they aren't hostile, and then you shoot them with the Wabbajack. You hope for the transformation effect. Poof! Lydia turns into a rabbit, or a mud crab. For that brief moment, Lydia ceases to exist. She's replaced by a generic creature entity. Then, when the spell wears off and the rabbit transforms back into a Nord woman, the game has to reload her character data from scratch. It looks at your current level, 80, looks at her scaling potential, and respawns her with fresh stats matching yours, up to her cap. You have effectively performed a hard reset on your wife by turning her into a bunny. It is a violent software update. You're beating the glitches out of your friends. This method fixes the first encounter lock, ensuring they are at least at their maximum potential, even if that potential is still capped at 50. It's the best you can do for them without console commands. Lore-wise, this is terrifying. Imagine being the Dragonborn's companion. One day, they take you into the woods, look you in the eye with a sorrowful expression, and blast you with the chaotic energy of the mad god. You spend 30 seconds as a crustacean, experiencing the simple, wet thoughts of a mud crab, only to pop back into existence feeling strangely refreshed and stronger than before. "Thank you, my Thane," you say, confused, flexing your newfound muscles. "I feel updated." There is a similar issue with their equipment. Followers have a hidden inventory. When you give them armor, they equip it. But sometimes they have a default bow or sword that is invisible in the trade menu but which they prefer to use. You give them a dragonbone bow, but they keep pulling out their pathetic hunting bow. Why? Because the game marks their default weapon as unplayable, meaning you can't see it or remove it, but the AI marks it as preferred because it has infinite ammo for them. The fix involves the pickpocket perk, Perfect Touch, which allows you to steal equipped items. You have to pickpocket your own follower, steal their invisible default bow, if the game allows you to see it with the perk, and force them to use the weapon you gave them. You're stealing the clothes off your friend's back to force them to wear the Gucci gear you crafted. Core in-game facts remind us that followers are tools. Boethiah's calling requires you to sacrifice a follower. The Blades ask you to recruit followers. The game treats them as resources, but the emotional connection players form with them is real. We don't see the level cap, 50 variable. We see the person who saved us from a Draugr overlord in Bleak Falls Barrow. This mismatch between emotional value and mechanical value creates a dissonance. You want to bring your spouse on adventures, but you know they will die. So you leave them at home in Lakeview Manor, safe but bored. You become the absentee hero, returning only to drop off loot and sleep for 8 hours, while your low-level family wanders the house in a scripted loop. There is a tragic beauty to Serana, the vampire follower from the Dawnguard DLC. She has a higher level cap, often 60 or higher, and a more complex AI package that allows her to interact with the world, sitting in chairs, using workbenches. She feels more alive, but even she has quirks. Her Ice Spike spell often misses enemies and hits you, and she has a habit of resurrecting the weakest possible corpse in the room. You are fighting a dragon priest, and Serana decides that the tactical play is to resurrect a chicken. But back to the level caps. The existence of these caps suggests that the Dragonborn is destined to outgrow everyone. It is a lonely ascent to godhood. The NPCs are bound by the limitations of their race and class, while you are bound only by your playtime. You are an isekai protagonist in a world of static NPCs. Consider the Dead Thrall spell. If you can't find a strong living follower, why not make a dead one? The Master level Conjuration spell allows you to permanently reanimate a corpse. If you kill a high-level bandit chief or a vampire master who scaled to your level and then enthrall them, you have a follower who is level appropriate. The game mechanics encourage you to prefer a high-level zombie over a low-level friend. It pushes you towards necromancy not out of malice, but out of a desire for competence. The Cicero dilemma is another fan favourite. Cicero the Mad Jester has a surprisingly high-level cap, 50, identical to Housecarl's, but with better stats distribution in one-handed and sneak. He dances, he rhymes, and he murders with efficiency. Many players find him annoying, but mechanically, he is a superior stealth companion compared to the stoic, clunky Housecarls. The game asks, do you want a silent, weak friend or a loud, strong psychopath? Most players eventually choose the psychopath. So as you travel the roads of Skyrim, look at the person walking behind you. Look at Mjol the Lioness, who talks endlessly about her father and the grim, severed heads of bandits. She is essential, cannot die, which is a mechanic all its own, making her a perfect tank regardless of her level. She can take infinite punishment, kneel down, and get back up. She is the unstoppable object to your unstoppable force. But for the mortal followers, the Lydias, the Fendels, the Eric the Slayers, their watch has an end. There comes a point where you must retire them. You take their armour, you take their weapons, and you tell them, part ways. They walk back to their designated spawn point, back to the tavern or the Jarl's Hall, to sit and drink and repeat their 3 lines of dialogue forever. They are the retired heroes, the ones who couldn't keep up with the math, and you, the level 81 god, walk out the door alone, because at the summit of the world there is no room for a level 50 hitbox. But while we are treating people like objects, let's talk about the people we treat even worse, the merchants. We all know the pain of returning to town with a backpack full of loot, only to find that Belethor has run out of gold. You have 10,000 septims worth of dragon bones, and he has 700 coins. You could wait 48 hours for his inventory to reset, or you could use a little kinetic persuasion to force the economy to bend to your will. The wooden floorboards of Belethor's general goods creak under the weight of your backpack. The air is thick with the smell of dry herbs, old fur, and the metallic tang of rusty tools. Belethor leans over the counter, rubbing his hands together with that sleazy, oil-slick charm of his. Everything's for sale, my friend. Everything. If I had a sister, I'd sell her in a second. You nod politely. You don't want his sister. You want his gold. Specifically, you want to offload the 37 daggers of banishment you just crafted to level your smithing. Each dagger is worth 1,000 septims. You open the trade menu. Belethor has 750 gold. You sell 1 dagger. He is now broke. You're still carrying 36 daggers. This is the economic bottleneck of Skyrim. The Dragonborn is a billionaire in assets, but a pauper in liquidity because the banking system of Tamriel is run by people who keep their life savings in a small wooden chest under the counter. The tutorial teaches you the speech skill. It tells you to invest perk points into Investor or Master Trader to increase the gold cap of merchants by a measly 500 or 1,000 coins. It expects you to travel from Riften to Solitude, acting like a travelling salesman, offloading your wares one by one, or it expects you to wait. The The standard mechanic for a vendor reset is 48 in-game hours. You can press the wait button, watch the hours tick by, tick, tick, tick for 2 full rotations of the sun. It takes time, it breaks the immersion. You stand in the middle of the shop like a statue while Belethor stares at you, unblinking for 2 days straight. But the Lawmaster knows a faster way, a violent way, a way that involves punching the economy in the face. The Merchant Inventory Reset glitch is a ritual that exploits the game's save state logic. It works like this. 1. Stand in front of the merchant. 2. Quick save your game. 3. Punch the merchant. 4. Quick load the game. It sounds insane. It sounds like the actions of a lunatic. But let's break down what happens in the engine. When you punch Belethor, you trigger his aggro state. The game flags him as an enemy. He draws his dagger, he shouts for the guards. His AI state shifts from vendor to combatant. Then, you instantly reload the save you made before the punch. In a logical world, the game should just load the previous state where he was calm and broke. But the Skyrim engine is not a logical world. When the game reloads the cell, it struggles to reconcile the combatant flag it just processed with the peaceful save state. In its confusion, it performs a hard reset on the NPC to ensure stability. It wipes his short-term memory, and along with it, his inventory data. When the screen fades back in, Belethor is standing there, smiling. He doesn't remember the punch. He doesn't remember that you just sold him a dagger. But his inventory has been regenerated from the master list. He has his default 750 gold back. You sell him another dagger, you quick save, you punch him again. Thwack. You quick load. He smiles. Do come back. You have trapped this poor shopkeeper in a Groundhog Day loop of violence and commerce. In one timeline, he is being assaulted by the savior of Skyrim. In the current timeline, he is happily buying your garbage. You are effectively laundering your loot through different dimensions. This renders the entire speech skill tree, specifically the economy branch, completely useless. Why spend 5 precious perk points to raise a merchant's gold cap to 2,000 when you can refresh their 700 gold instantly and infinitely with a left hook? The Master Trader perk, the level 100 capstone of the speech tree, gives every merchant in the world an extra 1,000 gold. That is a pitiful reward for mastering the art of negotiation. The punch reset is available at level 1 and costs 0 perks. It only costs a sliver of your morality. There is a sensory rhythm to this exploit that becomes almost meditative. F5, quick save. Click, attack. Belethor grunts. F9, quick load. Loading screen. I'd even buy one of your relatives. Sell, repeat. It turns the act of trading into a glitch hop beat. You stop seeing the merchant as a person. They are a vending machine that you have to kick to make it work. Consider the Riverwood trader and Lucan Valerius. He is often the first victim of this technique. You steal the golden claw back from the bleak crypts, you give it to him, and then you proceed to punch him repeatedly to sell off the ancient Nord weapons you found. His sister Camilla stands in the corner watching. She never intervenes. She just watches as you assault her brother, rewrite time, and then sell him a garnet. The NPCs of Skyrim display a terrifying level of indifference to the manipulation of their reality. There is an obscure lore tidbit, or rather, a developer oversight, regarding the fence merchants in the Thieves Guild. Tanilia, the fence in the Ragged Flagon, eventually has 4,000 gold if you complete all the guild quests. She is the richest merchant in the game legitimately, but even she cannot handle the value of a high-level potion or an enchanted Daedric Warhammer. A single Banished Daedra bow can be worth 5,000 gold. Tanilia looks at it and shrugs. I can't afford that. The punch glitch solves this. You don't need a richer merchant. You just need a merchant with a short memory. By resetting the inventory, you can sell the expensive item, buy back all their soul gems and potions, to give them more gold, since buying adds your gold to their pool, and then sell the item. Then punch and reset to get your gold back. The fan community has developed a humorous headcanon for this. They argue that the Dragonborn isn't actually punching the merchant. Instead, the punch represents a burst of negotiation so intense, so aggressive, that it shocks the merchant into finding a hidden stash of gold they were holding back. Oh, you're going to hit me? Well, actually, I do have another sack of coins under the floorboards. The quick load is just the Dragonborn blinking and composing themselves, but mechanically, it reveals how fragile the simulated world really is. The game wants you to believe that the economy is alive, that mines produce ore, which smiths buy, which they turn into weapons. But the economy is just a static list that refreshes on a timer. The gold doesn't come from customers. It generates out of thin air every 48 hours. You're just speeding up the printing press. This trick also works for refreshing a merchant's stock, not just their gold. If you're looking for a specific enchantment, say muffle or water breathing, you can check the blacksmith. If he doesn't have it, save, punch, load. His inventory re-rolls. You can stand in front of Balamund in Riften for an hour, punching him dozens of times, cycling through hundreds of randomly generated armor pieces until the specific boots you want finally appear. You are forcing the RNG, random number generator, to bend to your will. It's the same for alchemists. Need a Daedra heart? Check Arcadia's cauldron. No heart. Save, punch, load. Now she has 2. Buy them. Save, punch, load. Now she has 2 more. You can farm the rarest ingredients in the game without ever leaving the shop. You're not an adventurer gathering supplies. You're a quantum customer bullying the supply chain. There is, however, a risk. If you're not careful, if you accidentally overwrite your save instead of loading, you're stuck in the timeline where you just punched the shopkeeper. Now you have a bounty. The guards are coming. You have to pay the fine or go to jail. The safe timeline is lost. This adds a thrill of danger to the mundane act of shopping. One slip of the finger, and you are a criminal. The animation of the punch itself is hilarious in its lack of impact on the relationship. In the aggro timeline, the merchant screams, "You need to leave," or "guard." In the reset timeline, their disposition toward you remains unchanged. In fact, if you've invested in their shop, they still greet you warmly. "It's a fine day with you around," they say, mere seconds after you shattered their jaw in a parallel universe. This mechanic highlights the difference between immersion and convenience. Immersion is waiting 48 hours, watching the shadows lengthen, maybe sitting in a chair and eating an apple. Convenience is violence. And after your 100th hour in Skyrim, convenience almost always wins. You stop caring about the roleplay of the noble hero and start caring about the weight limit in your inventory. The ultimate irony is that by using this glitch, you become the single greatest driver of inflation in Tamriel. You're pumping millions of gold worth of items into the economy, draining every shopkeeper dry, and then forcing them to magically acquire more money so you can do it again. You are a one-person economic crisis. And speaking of passing through barriers, whether they be economic barriers or physical ones, let's talk about walls. We are taught that walls are solid. We are taught that locked doors require keys. But in Skyrim, a wooden plate is not just dinnerware. It is a portal to the void. If you know how to hold a platter just right, you can walk through iron gates, stone walls, and even the boundaries of the level itself. The concept of a locked door is fundamental to the structure of an adventure. It controls the pacing. It tells you you are not ready to be here yet. The game places a heavy iron gate in your path, or a stone wall that requires a specific claw to open. The tutorial teaches you to look for the key, to solve the puzzle, to follow the breadcrumbs laid out by the level designers. It reinforces the idea that the geometry of the world is solid and immutable. But to the lore master, the walls of Skyrim are not made of stone. They are made of math. And sometimes the math gets confused. If you have ever picked up a wooden plate, one of those useless junk items found on every dining table in the game, you have held the skeleton key to the universe. You're not holding a piece of dinnerware, you're holding a portable dimension door. The mechanic is known in the community as the platter glitch, or wall clipping, and it exposes the fragility of the Havoc physics engine. The setup is simple, almost ritualistic. You drop a large wooden plate, or a silver platter, or even a wooden bowl on the ground. You hold the interact button to grab it, floating it in front of your face. You position it so that it is flat against the locked door or wall you wish to bypass, and then you sprint. You run face first into the plate. The game engine suddenly has a panic attack. It calculates that you are pushing the plate, but the plate is hitting the wall. In the real world, the plate would break or you would bounce off. In Skyrim, the collision detection logic tries to resolve the conflict of two solid objects occupying the same space. If you are moving fast enough, perhaps using the whirlwind sprint shout to add velocity, the engine decides that the path of least resistance is to simply teleport your character coordinates to the other side of the obstacle. Pop, you're through. You're now standing inside a room you weren't supposed to enter for another 20 hours of gameplay. You can phase through the gate of Castle Volkihar before starting the Dawnguard questline. You can phase through the elevator mechanism in the Tower of Mzark to grab the Elder Scroll without ever setting foot in the sprawling, dangerous depths of Blackreach. You have turned the grand, epic dungeon crawl into a 5-second commute. This mechanic works because walls in video games are one-sided. They are solid from the outside to keep you out. But often, once you're inside the void or the wrong side of the geometry, you can see out or walk back through. But usually you just use the plate again to leave. You become a ghost, haunting the level design, bypassing the scripts and triggers that the developers carefully placed to narrate your journey. It changes the genre of the game from high fantasy to heist movie. You look at a master-locked door and you don't check your lockpicks. You check your inventory for kitchenware. Does anyone have a bowl? I need to break into this. Vault. But physics abuse isn't limited to exploration. It also breaks combat through the shield charge perk, the capstone of the block skill tree. The core in-game fact is that shield charge allows you to sprint with your shield raised, knocking down most enemies you hit. It turns you into a bowling ball. The enemies fly backward, their limbs flailing in the ragdoll state. It's hilarious and powerful. But the hidden mechanic, or the glitchy implementation of it, is that this state of charging is notoriously sticky. Sometimes the game forgets to turn off the knockdown flag on your character. You can tap the block button while sprinting to initiate the charge, and even if you lower the shield, the game might still consider you a projectile. You run into people and they go flying without you even raising your arm. You're simply walking with such assertive energy that the physics engine throws people out of your way. There is also the infinite ragdoll loop. When an enemy is knocked down by shield charge, they have to play a stand-up animation before they can fight again. This animation takes a few seconds. Shield charge has no cooldown. You can knock them down, wait for them to start standing up, and then knock them down again. You can do this to an entire group of bandits. You're not fighting them, you're juggling them. You're keeping them in a permanent state of horizontal suspension. They never get to play the game. This applies even to enemies that should logically be immune. While dragons and mammoths are usually resistant, smaller boss enemies like dragon priests or high-level vampires are susceptible. Imagine a terrifying ancient vampire, centuries old, possessed of blood magic that can drain the life from a city. Now imagine him trying to stand up for 5 minutes while a Nord with a plank of wood repeatedly shoves him over. The grandeur of the villain evaporates, replaced by the slapstick comedy of the physics engine. There is an obscure lore tidbit, a developer commentary note, that suggests the Giants Club launch, where a giant hits you and sends you into the stratosphere, is the same physics calculation as the shield charge, just with the magnitude set to 1000 instead of 10. It's all just momentum transfer. The Skyrim space program is just shield charge gone wrong. The community has taken the plate glitch to artistic levels. Speedrunners use it to beat the game in under an hour. They don't see Skyrim as a land of mountains and valleys. They see it as a series of collision meshes to be breached. They know which walls are thin enough to clip through and which floors have holes that drop you into the endgame area. They navigate the blue hell, the void outside the map where you can see the unrendered backsides of mountains, with the confidence of a cartographer. But for the bedtime adventurer, this mechanic offers a different kind of solace. It offers a way out of glitches. Have you ever been stuck in a rock? Have you ever had a quest bug out where a door wouldn't open? The wooden plate is your debugger. It is the tool that lets you fix the game from the inside. There is a specific interaction with the bucket. If you place a bucket over an NPC's head, the physics engine blocks their line of sight. They effectively become blind. You can then steal everything in the room while they stand there with a pail on their head, complaining about the weather. Must be the wind, they say, while staring into the bottom of a bucket. This isn't a glitch per se, but an exploitation of the vision cone mechanic. The game traces a line from their eyes to you. If that line hits a bucket, the check fails. You are hidden. Combining these physics exploits creates a surreal gameplay loop. You phase through a wall with a plate, put a bucket on the boss's head, shield charge him into a corner, and then steal his sword. You are not a warrior, you are a poltergeist. You are a chaotic force of nature that refuses to acknowledge the rules of solids and liquids. The sound of the plate glitch is distinctive. Clatter, clatter, thud, whoosh. The sound of the physics object rattling against the door, followed by the sudden silence of the void as you clip through. It is the sound of breaking the fourth wall. Visually, it can be disorienting. For a moment, you see the world turn inside out. You see the skybox from below. You see the chests hidden under the merchant's floor. The merchant chests we discussed earlier are actual physical boxes hidden underground. And then you pop back into reality. It feels like waking up from a dream within a dream. The game tries to contain you. It puts up invisible walls at the edge of the map. It puts key required on doors, but with a wooden plate and enough determination, there are no walls. There is only suggestions. So the next time you're trapped in a dungeon, low on health, with a locked gate between you and freedom, look at the table, grab that platter, sprint, and trust that the math will break before your nose does. But while we are defying the laws of physics, let's talk about the laws of biology. Specifically, the fact that your choice of race determines more than just your starting spells. It determines your physical size, and in a game engine built on scale, size equals speed. You might think all characters run at the same pace. You would be wrong. The High Elves are winning the race, and they didn't even tell you they were running. We return to the very beginning. The cart ride has ended, you have been called forward by the Imperial Captain, and you are staring at the character creation menu. You are deciding who you want to be. Do you choose a Nord for the cold resistance, an Orc for the rage ability, a Breton for the magic defense? The game presents these choices as a balance of racial passives and starting skill bonuses. It treats the physical appearance of your character, the height, the weight, the jawline, as purely cosmetic flair. But hidden within the skeleton of your character model is a variable that dictates the pace of your entire playthrough. It is a mechanic that validates the arrogance of the Thalmor and punishes the short. The mechanic is simple: height equals speed. In the Skyrim engine, movement speed is not a fixed constant across all races. It is a multiplier derived directly from the character's scale. The taller you are, the longer your stride, and therefore the faster you move across the map. This isn't just an animation trick where taller characters take fewer steps to cover the same distance. They actually possess a higher velocity value. This means that the High Elf, Altmer, is objectively the fastest race in the game. Let's look at the numbers. The standard scale for a generic NPC or an Imperial male is 1.0. An Altmer character has a default scale of 1.08. A Wood Elf, Bosmer, male, has a scale of 0.18. A female Breton or Khajiit is even shorter, hovering around 0.95. Because speed scales linearly with height, a High Elf moves 8% faster than an Imperial and nearly 10% faster than a female Breton. This applies to everything: walking, running, sprinting, and even sneaking. If you're playing a High Elf, you are permanently under the effects of a mild speed potion compared to your shorter counterparts. You can outrun bears slightly easier. You can kite enemies, backing away while swinging a sword, more effectively because you create distance faster than they can close it. This is a core in-game fact. High Elves are the tallest race. The lore tells us they look down on the races of men, but the obscure mechanics reveal that this physical stature gives them a distinct tactical advantage that the game never explains. You might think your Wood Elf archer feels zippy because they are small and agile, but in a foot race across the Whiterun tundra, the lumbering-robed High Elf will leave the Wood Elf in the dust. The difference is subtle to the naked eye, but felt over hundreds of hours of gameplay. It affects the feel of the camera. When playing a High Elf, the camera sits higher, giving you a better vantage point over obstacles and enemies. You feel like a commander surveying the battlefield. When playing a Breton, the camera is lower, often obscured by tall grass or the shoulders of taller NPCs. You feel smaller, you feel slower, and mathematically you are. This has created a fascinating Altmer supremacy debate within the speedrunning community. While many speedrunners use specific glitches, like the plate clipping we discussed, that make run speed irrelevant, for glitchless categories or combat challenges, the High Elf is the optimal choice purely for the movement bonus. If you need to dodge a dragon's breath or outmaneuver a giant, that extra 8% speed is the difference between life and a reload screen. It also affects melee reach. The scale variable also influences the size of your weapon's hitbox. A High Elf swinging a sword has a slightly longer reach than a Wood Elf swinging the same sword. It's a matter of inches, but in a game where spacing is key, those inches matter. You can hit a bandit from a distance where his dagger can't reach you. You're fighting with a longer lever. Conversely, the Orcs are the second tallest race, scale 1.045, making them the second fastest and best suited for melee combat among the tough races. The Nords come in third, 1.03. The tutorial frames Wood Elves as the best scouts and thieves, citing their agility. But if a thief needs to run away from the guards, the agile Wood Elf is actually the worst possible pick. The clumsy orc will escape faster. There is a dark humour in this. The game lore paints the Bosmer as masters of the forest, quick and nimble. But the engine treats them like children trying to keep up with adults. It effectively hardcodes a biological hierarchy where the civilized elven tallboys are genetically gifted with athleticism, while the wild elves are genetically curbed. You can test this yourself with console commands on PC. If you type player.setscale10, you become a giant. You tower over buildings, and when you tap the forward key, you cross the entire map in seconds. You move like a god. Conversely, if you set player.setscale 0.1, you become the size of a mouse. You run, your little legs pumping furiously, but it takes you 10 minutes just to cross the street in Riverwood. The physics engine links your stride to your existence. This mechanic creates a subtle bias in how you experience the world. As a high elf, the world feels smaller, you traverse it quicker. The travel between quest markers feels slightly less tedious. As a Breton, the world feels vast and overwhelming. It takes longer to get anywhere. The mountains seem higher because you're looking up at them from a lower angle. It is a psychological trick played by a simple float variable. There is also a strange interaction with jump height. Since jump height is calculated based on physics and momentum, and you have more momentum as a taller character, high elves can jump slightly higher. There are certain rocks and ledges in the game that a high elf can vault onto effortlessly, allowing them to shortcut climbing puzzles or find safe spots where melee enemies can't reach them. The wood elf has to walk the long way around. The gender dimorphism in Skyrim further complicates this. In most races, males are taller and, thus faster, than females. But in the lore-accurate twist of the Ultima, the males and females are roughly the same imposing height. However, for the Khajiit, the females are significantly smaller. This means a male Khajiit thief is mechanically superior to a female Khajiit thief, simply because he has longer legs. It is an unfair, invisible glass ceiling built into the polygon count. Fans have theorized, is this intentional? Did Bethesda want the high elves to feel superior? Or is it just a byproduct of using the same animation skeleton for everyone and just stretching it? If they had adjusted the animation speed to compensate, making the short characters take faster steps, it would have balanced out. But they didn't. They just stretched the model and let the physics engine do the rest. It reinforces the feeling that the Dragonborn is a physical entity in the world, not just a floating camera. When you play in first person, you might not notice your own height until you stand face to face with a High King or a Jarl. As an Altmer, you look Jarl Balgruuf in the eye. As a Bosmer, you look at his chin. It changes the power dynamic of the conversation. So if you ever felt that your playthrough was dragging, that the run from Riften to Ivarstead was taking forever, check your race. You might be suffering from short stride syndrome, and if you want to be the ultimate efficient predator of the wilds, don't pick the hunter race. Pick the golden-skinned wizard, put on some heavy armour, made weightless by the Steedstone, and sprint across the map like a terrifying magical giraffe. But speed and size are deterministic. You are either tall or you are not. Other mechanics are not so certain. Other mechanics rely on chance, or at least they pretend to. We need to talk about the lie of the percentage sign. Specifically, the number 90% next to the steal prompt. You think it means you have a 9 out of 10 chance. The game knows better. You are crouched in the shadows of the Cloud District watching Nazim patrol the market. He is smug, he is annoying, and he possesses a distinct lack of situational awareness. You decide that he does not deserve the jewellery he is carrying. You creep up behind him, the sneak eye fully closed. You press the interact button to open his inventory. The menu pauses time. You see a gold diamond necklace. Next to it, a number in green text, 90%. You do the mental math. 9 out of 10 times this works. You have level 100 pickpocket. You're wearing the Guildmaster's boots, which improve pickpocketing by 35%. You drank a potion that boosts it by another 20%. You're the greatest thief in the history of Tamriel. You click take. Thief! Guards! Nazim screams. The guards rush in. You are baffled. You had a 90% chance. You reload your save. You try again. 90%. You fail again. This is the tyranny of the pickpocket probability cap. The game is lying to you about your mastery. No matter how high you buff your skill, you could have a pickpocket skill of 500 through exploits, you could wear gear that gives you 1000% success chance. The game engine enforces a hard-coded maximum success rate of 90%. There is always, mathematically, a 10% chance that the universe simply decides to punish you. This is distinct from every other skill in the game. If you have 100 in archery, the arrow goes where you aim. If you have 100 in smithing, the armour is always legendary. But pickpocket is the only skill where mastery does not equal certainty. The developers deliberately inserted a fail state that you cannot outlevel. They decided that the Dragonborn, capable of slaying gods, must occasionally be clumsy enough to get caught stealing a sweet roll, but the lie goes deeper. The percentage you see is often not the real percentage calculated by the back end. The game calculates the difficulty based on the item's weight and value. Gold is easy, gems are easy, but try to steal a heavy weapon or a piece of armour, the percentage plummets. However, there is a hidden state where the probability becomes truly broken. The paralysis loophole. This is the secret that turns the luck-based minigame into a guaranteed transaction. It involves a specific interaction between the physics engine, ragdoll state, and the inventory system. If you paralyze an NPC using a spell, a weapon enchantment, or the reverse pickpocket poison trick, they fall down stiff as a board. While they are paralyzed on the ground, you cannot pickpocket them. The prompt won't appear or it will say 0%. But the moment the paralysis effect wears off, and they begin the animation to stand up, there is a brief window of opportunity. During this recovery frame, the AI has not yet re-engaged its detection logic. If you pickpocket them while they're standing up, the game ignores the probability calculation entirely. The percentage might say 0%, it might say 90%, it doesn't matter. The success rate is treated as 100%. You can steal their equipped clothes, their weapons, their gold, anything. They will not catch you. They will finish standing up, look you in the eye, and have no idea that they are now naked and broke. This exploit completely bypasses the 90% cap. It is the only way to achieve true perfection in thievery. It requires timing, not stats. You become a predator waiting for the prey to blink. The reverse pickpocket mechanic itself is a fascinating inversion of the game's logic. The poisoned perk in the pickpocket tree allows you to silently place poisons into an enemy's inventory, which they then drink instantly. This turns pickpocketing into an assassination tool, but there is a hilarious logic gap here. To paralyze the target to do the stand-up glitch, you can reverse pickpocket a paralysis poison into their pocket. But wait, to put the poison in, you have to pass a pickpocket check, capped at 90%. So you're gambling on the first move to guarantee the second move. Unless, of course, you use the ice form shout. You freeze them solid. You wait for the ice to break. As they stumble to their feet, you rob them blind. The thief archetype usually relies on stealth, but this mechanic encourages aggressive theft. You freeze the shopkeeper, wait for the Thor, steal his entire stock, and walk out before he fully regains his composure. There is a core in-game fact regarding the Perfect Touch perk, level 100 pickpocket. This perk allows you to steal equipped items, swords from hands, armour from bodies. It is the ultimate humiliation. You can leave a bandit chief fighting you in his underwear. But the mechanic has a quirk. If you steal an enemy's weapon, they will often run away or pull out a backup dagger. If you steal their armour, their defense rating drops, making them squishier. But the game sometimes glitches with unique items. If you steal a unique weapon from a boss using Perfect Touch, and then kill them, the weapon might respawn on their corpse, effectively duplicating it. You have stolen the sword from the living man, and looted the same sword from the dead man. You have cloned the artifact through the act of theft. The community debate around pickpocketing centres on save scumming. Because of the 90% cap, almost every player treats the F5, quick save, and F9, quick load keys as part of the pickpocketing interface. The gameplay loop is not assess risk, act. It is save, fail, load, succeed. Is this cheating? Or is it the Dragonborn's true power, the ability to manipulate time until the 10% failure rate doesn't happen? Lore-wise, you could argue that the successful pickpocket was the canon timeline, and the failures were just premonitions of what could go wrong. There is also the bribery mechanic. If you get caught, the guards confront you. If you are the Thane, or have the bribe guards perk, you can pay them off. But there is a hidden economy here. The bribe is often cheaper than the item you stole. If you steal a diamond worth 1,000 gold, and the bribe is 200 gold, getting caught is still profitable. The crime pays even when you are punished for it. You are just paying a tax on your larceny. Visually, the pickpocket menu is tense. The world pauses, but the sound continues. You hear the ambient noise of the city, the footsteps of the guard. It creates a feeling of holding your breath, but the math is cold and unfeeling. There is an obscure lore tidbit, a quirk of the extra pockets perk. This perk, found in the pickpocket tree, increases your carry weight by 100. It is one of the best utility perks in the game. But why is it in the pickpocket tree? It implies that by learning to steal, you have learned to pack your bags more efficiently. Or perhaps you have learned to steal space itself. It makes the pickpocket tree essential, even for lawful good paladins who just want to carry more dragon bones. The percent chance creates some of the funniest moments in the game. If you try to steal gold from a trainer after you paid them, to get your money back, the difficulty spikes as the gold amount increases. At high levels, you might pay 50,000 gold for training. Trying to steal that stack back often shows 0%, but with the paralysis glitch or extreme gear stacking, sometimes breaking the display UI, you can take it back. You essentially get free education by robbing your teachers. This creates a cycle where the Dragonborn is a parasitic student. You ask Feindel to train you in archery. You pay him, you take the money back from his pocket, you pay him again. You're just moving the same coins back and forth, but your skill increases every time. The economy of knowledge is completely broken by your sticky fingers. So when you see that 90%, do not trust it. It is a gambler's lie. It is the house edge. The only way to win is to stop playing by the rules of probability and start playing by the rules of physics. Knock them down and take it all while they are trying to remember how to use their legs. But while we are destroying the defenses of our enemies, let's talk about a shout that doesn't just hurt them, but ruins them permanently. There is a sequence of words that, when spoken, breaks the armor formula we discussed earlier in reverse, stripping enemies of their protection until they are softer than jelly. Stealing a sword from a guard's hip is a petty crime. It is a material loss. The guard can go to the armory and get another blade, but there is a theft much deeper, much more insidious, that the Dragonborn can commit. It is the theft of durability itself. It is the act of stripping away an enemy's ability to exist in a physical world, turning their plate mail into paper and their dragon scales into wet tissue. We are talking about the shout Cree Lun Aus, marked for death. To the uninitiated, this shout seems underwhelming. You find the words on word walls in the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary or Autumn Watch Tower. The description in the menu says, drains the target's health and armor rating for 60 seconds. You might use it once, see the enemy's health tick down slowly, and decide it's useless compared to the immediate gratification of fire breath or the crowd control of ice form. You shelf it, you forget about it. But the description is a lie. The 60 seconds part applies to the health drain, the armor rating damage. In the vanilla version of the game code, that damage is permanent, and worse, or better, depending on your perspective, it stacks. Here is the mechanics of the curse. When you hit an enemy with a full 3-word shout, their armor rating is reduced by 75 points per second for the duration of the shout. Do the math. 75 points times 60 seconds is a total reduction of 4,500 armor rating. Remember our earlier discussion about the armor cap? The maximum useful armor rating is 567. A reduction of 4,500 doesn't just bring them to 0. It punches through the floor of the graph and drags them deep into the mathematical hell of negative armor rating. The game engine does not stop at 0. If an enemy has an armor rating of 1,000, they don't just take full damage, they take amplified damage. The damage reduction formula inverts. Instead of mitigating the blow, the negative armor rating acts as a damage multiplier. If you shout Cree Lun Aus at a legendary dragon, dodge its attacks for 60 seconds, and then hit it with an iron dagger, you will see a chunk of health vanish that shouldn't be possible. If you wait for the cooldown and shout at it again, the effect stacks. The dragon now has 9,000 armor rating. It is effectively made of glass. A single arrow from a weak bow might kill it instantly. This mechanic completely trivializes the legendary difficulty setting. On legendary, the game artificially inflates enemy health and reduces the damage you deal to a quarter of its normal value. It turns enemies into damage sponges. You hit them and their health bar barely moves. It is tedious. Marked for death is the mathematical counterargument to legendary difficulty. It doesn't care about the difficulty slider's damage penalty, because it modifies the enemy's physical properties directly. You aren't hitting harder, the enemy's just dying easier. You're rewriting their material composition to be softer than air. There is a disturbing permanence to this. If you fight a difficult boss like a dragon priest and you hit them with this shout but then are forced to retreat and leave the dungeon, the game saves their state. If you return 3 weeks later, that dragon priest is still marked. His armor is still shattered. The curse does not wash off. Time does not heal this wound. You have permanently ruined him. This leads to a core in-game fact that many players learn the hard way. The shout works on everything, including your own followers. If you're fighting in a chaotic melee swinging your sword and shouting at a bandit, and Lydia happens to step in front of the sound wave, she is marked. Her armor rating begins to plummet. For the rest of your playthrough, unless you use console commands to fix it, Lydia will be made of glass. She will wear full Daedric plate and die to a single mudcrab bite because her armor rating is reading as -5,000. You have accidentally cursed your best friend with terminal fragility. But the true horror, the obscure lore tidbit that keeps permadeath players awake at night, is that enemies can use this shout on you. Certain high-level Draugr and members of the Dark Brotherhood have access to Marked for Death. If you're exploring a Nordic ruin and you hear a Draugr Deathlord raspy voice shout, "Kree Lun Aus," you need to check your active effects immediately. If you see the icon, you're in trouble. If the glitch triggers on the player character, your armor rating is permanently destroyed. You could be the level 80 god we discussed earlier, with the best gear in the game, but if your base armor rating has been drained to negative numbers, you are walking around with a kick me sign on your back that multiplies incoming damage by 500%. There is no shrine that cures this. A potion of cure disease does nothing. The game code has simply decided that your character is now squishy. The only fix on console is to reload a save from before the shout hit you. If you survive the fight and save over your file, that character is effectively ruined. You are doomed to be one-shot by skeevers for the rest of eternity. This has sparked a massive debate in the fan community regarding the unofficial Skyrim patch. The modders who maintain the patch fixed this bug, making the armor damage temporary, as the tooltip likely intended. Purists argue that the patch ruins the fun, that the broken nature of the shout is a legitimate tool for a dragonborn who wants to feel like a god of death. They argue that death implies permanence, so the armor ruin should be permanent. It is a curse, not a debuff. Others argue that the patch is essential because having your save file ruined by a random Draugr shout is bad game design. It highlights the tension between lore and code. In the lore, a shout that withers the flesh and rusts the armor of an opponent is terrifying. In the code, it's just a missing restore script. Visually, the shout is sinister. It covers the enemy in a purple, hazy aura. You can hear the drain, a low, sizzling sound, like acid eating through metal. It is not the explosive boom of unrelenting force or the crackle of lightning. It is a quiet, eroding noise. It fits the stealth assassin archetype perfectly. You mark the target from the shadows, wait a minute for their armor to disintegrate, and then deliver a single, casual poke to end their life. The tactical implications are profound for pacifist runs, or at least runs where the Dragonborn doesn't want to get their hands dirty. You can mark an enemy and let a weak follower finish them off. You can mark a giant and let the Whiterun guards handle it. You become a debuffer, a warlock who weakens the world so that others can break it. There is a specific interaction with the Reflect Blows perk we mentioned earlier. If you have negative armor rating, due to being hit by the shout, and the enemy reflects damage back to you, the math gets very weird. But generally the rule is negative armor, death. Consider the narrative implication. The Greybeards teach you that the voice is for worship, for contemplating the sky. They warn you not to use it for violence. Arngeir looks at you with concern. Perhaps he knows about Kree Lun Aus. Perhaps he knows that there are words in the dragon language that don't just push the world but unmake it. To use this shout is to reject the way of the voice completely. It is the ultimate weapon of cruelty. When you use fire breath, you burn the enemy. It hurts, they die. It's clean. When you use Marked for Death, you're fundamentally altering their stats. You're reaching into their character sheet and erasing their defenses. You're bullying the metadata. For the player who loves big numbers, this shout is the key to the one-hit kill videos you see online. When you see someone deal 50,000 damage with a wooden sword, look closely at the setup. They likely hit the enemy with Marked for Death 4 or 5 times beforehand. They prepped the canvas before painting it with blood. It changes how you look at tough enemies. The Ebony Warrior, with his massive armor rating and health pool, becomes a joke. Kastag becomes a joke. You stop respecting the game's attempt to challenge you with durability. You realize that durability is just a number, and you have a button that creates subtraction. So, as you tuck yourself in, safe in the knowledge that your own armor rating is, hopefully, positive, remember the sound of Krilunaus. Remember that in the harsh lands of Skyrim there are words that stick. There are insults that don't just hurt your feelings, but actually make your skin softer. And if you ever hear a Draugr clear his throat to speak those words, run. Don't block. Don't fight. Just run. Reload your save. Because some mechanic failures are a fate worse than death. But what if you don't want to kill the enemy instantly? What if you want to keep them alive but unable to move, unable to fight, unable to do anything but recoil in pain forever? There is a rhythm of destruction that allows you to lock an opponent in a permanent state of stagger, a staccato beat of explosions that denies them the dignity of a counterattack. The battlefield is chaos. Arrows are flying, swords are clashing, and a dragon is circling overhead, preparing to bathe the tundra in fire. In the centre of this storm stands a mage. They are not wearing heavy armour. They are not holding a shield. They are wearing a simple robe flapping in the wind. They look vulnerable. A bandit chief charges at them, raising a two-handed warhammer for a killing blow. The mage raises both hands, palms facing out, sparks of lightning dancing between their fingers, and then the game stops being a fight and starts being a rhythm game. The mage releases the spell. Crack. A dual-cast thunderbolt hits the bandit. He doesn't just take damage, he reels back, stumbling, his attack animation violently interrupted. He shakes his head, tries to regain his balance, tries to raise his hammer again. The mage waits, 1 beat, 2 beats, and releases again. Crack. The bandit stumbles again. He grunts in frustration. He tries to shout, but the lightning hits him again. Crack! This is the impact stagger lock, a mechanic that fundamentally changes the nature of magical combat in Skyrim. It relies on a specific perk in the destruction skill tree called Impact. The text is simple. Most destruction spells stagger an opponent when dual cast. It sounds like a defensive tool, a way to buy space. But to the lore master, it is an offensive prison. The mechanics of stagger in the Skyrim engine are absolute. When an entity is staggered, their AI is suspended. They cannot move, they cannot block, they cannot attack. They are forced to play a specific animation, usually a pained recoil. This animation takes time, roughly 1 to 2 seconds depending on the enemy size. The cast time for a dual cast destruction spell like Firebolt or Incinerate is roughly half a second, or faster with certain buffs. Do the math. If the stagger lasts longer than the time it takes to charge and fire the next spell, the enemy is mathematically incapable of ever taking a turn. You're not fighting them. You're keeping them in a permanent state of oof. This mechanic trivializes the most terrifying encounters in the game. Consider the ancient dragon. It lands in front of you. It opens its maw, the air shimmering with heat, as it prepares to unleash a stream of fire that will melt your face. You hit it with a dual-cast fireball. The dragon's head snaps back. The fire in its throat dissipates. The shout is cancelled. It tries again. You hit it again. It snaps back. The mighty World Eater, the apex predator of Mundus, is reduced to a bobblehead doll that you're flicking with your finger. There is a core in-game fact that balances this, or tries to. Dual casting costs significantly more magicka than casting 2 spells separately. It costs 2.8 times the magicka for only 2.2 times the damage. It is inefficient. The game expects you to run out of juice. It expects you to stagger the enemy once, maybe twice, and then be forced to retreat while your blue bar recharges. But we have already discussed the broken nature of enchanting. If you craft a set of gear, helmet, chest, ring, necklace, with fortified destruction, you can reduce the cost of destruction spells by 100%. When the cost of the magic is 0, the inefficiency of dual casting becomes irrelevant. You have infinite ammo for your stun gun. You can hold the trigger down forever. The only limit is your boredom. This creates a distinct sensory experience. The whoosh crack of the spellcasting becomes a metronome. You fall into a trance. You stop looking at the enemy's health bar and start looking at their knees. As long as they are wobbling, you are safe. It creates a sense of detachment. The warrior is in the thick of it, sweating, bleeding, blocking. The mage is standing 20 feet away, pressing a button in a rhythmic cadence, watching a bandit dance the dance of pain. There is an obscure lore tidbit found in the Azadal mask from the Dragonborn DLC. This dragon priest mask increases fire damage, but also increases the magicka cost. For the impact mage with 100% cost reduction gear, the cost penalty is meaningless. 50% more of 0 is still 0. You get the damage buff for free. You become an artillery cannon with the firing rate of a machine gun. However, there is a hidden mechanic regarding stagger resistance. Some enemies, like the giant Karstag or certain dwarven centurions, have inherent resistance or large mass that reduces the duration of the stagger. But the impact perk is remarkably consistent. It ignores most mass calculations. It hits a giant the same way it hits a skeever. It is a kinetic force that defies physics. This leads to the mage scaling debate in the fan community. Detractors argue that destruction magic is weak because the damage numbers don't scale like weapon damage. A sword can be smithing loop to deal millions of damage. A fireball is capped at a few hundred. They say mages are weak in the endgame because they can't one-shot bosses. The counter-argument is the impact mechanic. The mage doesn't need to one-shot the boss. The mage can take 10 minutes to kill the boss, because during those 10 minutes, the boss is not allowed to play the game. The warrior trades health for damage. The mage trades time for safety. It is a control archetype. You're not the damage dealer. You're the dungeon master telling the enemy, no, you don't get a turn this round. There is a cruel irony in using this on melee enemies. A bandit chief with a warhammer wants nothing more than to close the gap. He runs at you. You blast him back. He runs again. You blast him back. It evokes the image of Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill. The bandit is trapped in a loop of futile effort. He will never reach you. He will die tired, frustrated, and scorched, having never swung his weapon. Visually, the element you choose changes the flavour of the stagger. Fire looks like an explosion, violent and messy. Frost slows them down even when they aren't staggered, adding insult to injury. Lightning is the most clinical. It hits instantly. Hit scan, meaning there is no travel time. You cannot miss. If you can see them, you can stun them. This creates a problem with multiple enemies. The impact perk only works on the target you hit. If you are facing a group, you have to switch targets rapidly, juggling them like a circus performer. Stun the guy on the left, stun the guy on the right, back to the left. It requires a high actions per minute awareness. If you miss a beat, if you let one of them recover, the illusion of safety shatters. You are wearing robes, remember? If the stagger lock fails, you die. The Wall of Storm spell or other spray spells does not trigger impact. It only works with projectile spells. This forces you to be precise. You can't just spray and pray. You have to aim. This adds a layer of skill to the exploit. You're a sniper of stillness. There is a specific interaction with the Augmented Flames Frost Shock perks. These increase damage, but they also subtly increase the force of the spell in some engine calculations. A fully perked fire mage hits harder physically than a novice. But the ultimate expression of this mechanic is the Ice Storm spell. Unlike a fireball which hits one target, Ice Storm is a slow-moving projectile that passes through enemies. If you dual cast it, it triggers the impact stagger on everyone it touches. You can cast it into a hallway filled with Draugr. As the storm moves through them, they all reel back in unison, like a choreographed dance line. It is arguably the best crowd control spell in the game because it applies the stagger rule to an area of effect. The impact mechanic essentially turns Skyrim into a turn-based RPG, where only one person gets turns. It removes the action from action RPG. The tension of blocking, dodging, and weaving evaporates. The only tension is maintaining the rhythm. And yet, despite this mastery over time and motion, despite your ability to freeze dragons in their tracks and bully giants into submission, there is one force in Skyrim that you cannot stagger. One enemy that has no health bar, no AI, and no mercy. It lies in wait on the floor of every dungeon, disguised as clutter. We have reached the end of our chronicle, the final layer of the iceberg. We have discussed how to become invincible, how to break the economy, and how to rewrite the laws of magic. You have learned to shout the armor off a dragon and punch a shopkeeper into a new timeline. You are, for all intents and purposes, a god walking amongst mortals. You have conquered every dungeon, slain every beast, and mastered every skill. But there is one enemy you cannot defeat, one assassin that never sleeps, never misses, and strikes without warning. It is not a Daedric prince, it is not a legendary vampire, it is a human skull lying on the floor of a cave. Welcome to the chaotic, violent, and completely unpredictable world of the Havoc physics engine. In the vast, interconnected systems of Skyrim, the physics engine is responsible for how objects move. It calculates gravity, friction, and momentum. When you drop an apple, it falls. When you drag a body, it has weight. This adds immersion. It makes the world feel tactile. But the engine has a dark secret. It struggles to differentiate between a falling apple and a meteor strike. When that apple is wedged between your foot and the floor, the scenario is a classic tragedy. You enter a necromancer's lair. The floor is littered with atmospheric clutter. Rib cages, skulls, flagons, maybe a stray cart. You, the level 81 Dragonborn, clad in armour that can tank a giant's club, step casually onto a ribcage. The physics engine detects a collision. It sees that your foot is occupying the same space as the bone. It panics. It tries to resolve this conflict by applying a force to separate the two objects. In the real world, the bone would slide away or crush. In Skyrim, the engine applies an exponential amount of force to eject the bone from under you. For a microsecond, that ribcage is accelerated to the speed of light. It vibrates violently, spinning with infinite torque, and because the game calculates collision damage based on the velocity of the object hitting you, that harmless piece of calcium transforms into a kinetic projectile with the stopping power of a railgun. Clang! Your health bar vanishes. Your character crumples to the ground, ragdolled across the room. The load last save screen appears. You stare at the monitor, bewildered. You just died to a prop. This is the ultimate hidden mechanic. The inanimate world is hostile. The tutorial teaches you to watch out for traps, pressure plates, tripwires, swinging axes. It teaches you to fear the red dots on your compass. It never teaches you to fear the clutter. It never tells you that a cast iron kettle is more dangerous than a fireball if you step in it the wrong way. The community calls this the poltergeist effect. It creates a sense of paranoia in veteran players. You learn to walk around the bones. You learn to treat a pile of wooden buckets like a minefield. You realise that the safest place to be is on flat, clean stone, away from the unpredictable wrath of the interior decorator. This issue is tied deeply to the game's frame rate. This is a core in-game fact, or rather an out-of-game technical fact. The physics engine is tied to the FPS, frames per second. The engine expects the game to run at 60 FPS. If you're playing on a modern PC with a high refresh rate monitor, running at 120 or 144 FPS, the physics calculations run twice as fast. Gravity pulls harder, water flickers, and objects vibrate with terrifying intensity. This is most famous in the game's opening sequence, the cart ride to Helgen. If your frame rate is too high, the physics of the cartwheels freak out. The cart begins to bounce, then spin, then launch into the stratosphere. The horse stretches into a noodle. Raeluf tries to deliver his "Hey you're finally awake" line while the cart is doing a barrel roll through a mountain. It is the perfect introduction to the game's true nature. Before you even create your character, the laws of physics have already surrendered. There is an obscure lore tidbit, a developer note, regarding the collision damage of vegetables. During development, there was a bug where stepping on a cabbage could launch the player into the sky. While they fixed the launch, mostly, the damage calculation remains finicky. There are documented cases of players dying because they tripped over a wheel of cheese. It gives a whole new meaning to lactose intolerant. But the Havoc engine isn't just a killer, it is a tool for the enlightened. We touched on the plate glitch earlier, but let's talk about kettle flight. If you drop a large object like a kettle or a basket and stand inside it, you can trick the physics engine into lifting you. You grab the object, holding the interact button, while standing on it. The game tries to pull the object up to your cursor, but your feet are holding it down. The engine resolves this by lifting both of you. With practice, you can fly. You can hover over mountains, bypass walls, and ascend to the throat of the world without taking the stairs. You look ridiculous, a hero surfing on a soup pot, but you are defying gravity through the sheer force of contradictory math. Then there is the giant club phenomenon. We mentioned the space program earlier. This is the Havoc engine at its peak. When a giant slams his club down, the game imparts a massive vertical velocity to your character model. It isn't a scripted death, it is a physics interaction. If you have enough health, or are immortal via cheats, you can survive the launch. You can see the entire map of Skyrim from the clouds, spinning slowly, watching the world shrink below you. It is the most breathtaking view in the game, and it is only accessible by getting hit with a tree trunk. The fan community loves these moments. Skyrim has no bugs, only features is the mantra. And in a way, it's true. The physics engine adds a layer of slapstick comedy to the grim, dark fantasy. You shout a bandit off a cliff and his body gets stuck in the rock, stretching and vibrating like a guitar string. A dragon dies and its skeleton proceeds to jitter dance across the ground, refusing to settle. These aren't failures. They are the personality of the game. There is a specific danger with swinging log traps. If you trigger one and it hits you, it hurts. But if you trigger it, and it hits a corpse, and that corpse hits you, the damage can be multiplied. The corpse becomes a projectile. You are killed by the dead body of the bandit you just slew, who has returned from the void to body slam you at Mach 5. This leads to the realization that mass is a weapon. The telekinesis spell in the alteration tree allows you to grab objects from afar and throw them. The damage is negligible, usually, but if you throw a heavy object, or if you use the telekinesis arrows glitch, dropping an arrow, holding it with telekinesis and releasing it, you can turn clutter into lethal weaponry. You can kill a dragon by throwing a cheese wheel at it if the velocity is high enough. It is the ultimate disrespect. To slay the World Eater not with a sword but with dairy products, but the most dangerous physics object of all, the cart. The stationary hand carts found in cities and dungeons. If you sprint into a cart, it might tip over. If you stand in the cart and it tips, the collision geometry can pinch your character model against the ground. The game interprets this pinch as crushing damage. You can step into a cart in Riften to hide from a guard, and the cart will simply eat you. Snap. Dead. The visual language of a physics death is distinct. There is no death animation, no graceful fall to the knees. You simply go limp instantly. Your body collapses into the ragdoll state mid-stride. It is sudden, brutal, and hilarious. So as we close the book on these hidden mechanics, we are left with a profound truth. The tutorial taught you how to swing a sword. It taught you how to cast a spell. It taught you to fear dragons and trolls. But it lied by omission. It didn't tell you that the most powerful force in Tamriel is the code itself. It didn't tell you that soup is infinite energy. It didn't tell you that vampires are better holy mages than priests. It didn't tell you that armor is a placebo, that walls are suggestions, and that a wooden plate is a key to the multiverse. And it certainly didn't tell you that a ribcage on the floor is the deadliest trap ever devised. You, the player, are not just the Dragonborn. You are the anomaly. You are the glitch in the system. You're the one who looks at the simulation and says, I can break this. And in that breaking, in that exploitation of the spaces between the rules, you find a kind of magic that no scroll can teach. You find the magic of the sandbox. The joy of a world that is just broken enough to be perfect. The fire in the hearth has burned down to glowing embers. The shadows in the room have softened, stretching long and lazy across the floorboards. The frantic clicking of the mouse, the rapid tapping of the keyboard, the obsession with numbers and stats. Let all of that fade away now. The spreadsheet is closed. The glitches are patched, at least in our minds for the night. Take a deep breath. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. We have spent this time dissecting the world of Skyrim, pulling apart its seams to see the clockwork underneath. We have exposed the lies of the tutorial and the secrets of the code, but now it is time to put the game away. Imagine your character, the one we have built together tonight, the High Elf with the silent heavy armour, the dual-wielding storm of speed, the master of the restoration loop. Imagine them finding a safe place to rest. Maybe it's a bedroll in a warm tent on the plains of Whiterun, under the auroras. Maybe it's a luxury suite in the Solitude Manor, safe behind stone walls. Or maybe they are simply sitting by a campfire, watching the stars wheel overhead, a bowl of vegetable soup warming in their hands. The physics engine has stopped vibrating. The dragons have returned to their mountaintops. The bandits have stopped their patrols. The world of Tamriel is still. It waits for you, frozen in a perfect save state, ready for whenever you choose to return. But you don't need to return right now. You have done enough. You have conquered the math. Now, The only mechanic that matters is rest. The only stat that needs regenerating is your own. Let the darkness of the room wrap around you like a heavy warm blanket, one that weighs nothing thanks to the Steedstone. Let the quiet hum of the night be your soundtrack. Drift away from the logic of the code and into the logic of dreams, where walls are soft, where gravity is gentle and where nothing can hurt you. You are safe here. The adventure is paused. The story is yours to dream. Sweet dreams.